All right, so we're live. I didn't do any intro music. I am working on it. I spent like an hour here farting around with intro music, but because I want to do something decent for the interview shows,
Yeah,
but I haven't finished it. I'm just not that good at it. And
that
the
happens.
pieces that I'm using, I'm going to do a slideshow, and the pieces that I'm using for the slideshow are just taking me forever to find. So it's sort of accomplishing two things. I needed to find these pictures anyway, on different hard drives and places on the internet. So it's just taking some time. So it's not my number one priority. But with that being said, this is the Daily Gun Show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for an hour. That's the gist of the show. Now, we've been doing this show for 1,370 something episodes, so we're not new at this, and we're not seeking fame or attention. What we're trying to do is we have some goals. We're trying to accomplish some things with this show. First and foremost is to come up with a way to manage the Second Amendment fight, the challenges that we have as they come up, not just the existing ones, but a system to deal with the evolution of the fight or the struggle with the right to retain individual rights. Along with that, I'd like to focus on some of the history, the things that got us to where we are, mainly because I like to give credit where credit's due, but also so that strategically we can be more tactical in our decision making going forward. So this show daily gives us an opportunity, a platform to do that. On Mondays, we motivate, we talk to people, and we try to talk about the tools and the techniques and the ways that people have been successful or failed so that we can all learn from each other. On Tuesdays, we talk about just plain old 2A. If that wasn't enough for you, we just dig into straight old 2A. We dig into a state each week, into an activist, and into an organization. And we feature one each week. And that's chosen by the people that show up live and choose it. Then we've got Wednesday where we have a little fun and do the tactical quiz where we try to create places and methodology for learning and sharing firearms knowledge and Second Amendment awareness through games and fun. Thursdays, we split it up between travel and training, two things I think are super important. And again, we're trying to accomplish stuff with this show. So by going live daily, especially when we have all these long format shows in the evening, we can really explore some of these things. This week, it's back to training, and we'll be talking about how to be a 2A activist. So it's a lot of 2A activist stuff this week because coming up this month is the Gun Rights Policy Conference and the AmCon, and a bunch of people will be getting together, and that's what it's all about. So we want to kind of focus on that. Then Fridays, we look back at the week in 2A, what was created out there on the different platforms, and we look at what's not the news of the day, but what important things happened that week, and then give reach and awareness and shed some light on some of the things that might have not been paid attention to. Some of the reasons we're optimistic in 2022 and eager to bring more people into the fight or the conversation or the community, however you want to look at it, because it's kind of all the same. All right, so that's my quick intro to the project, the Daily Gun Show. We've been doing this for a long time, so it evolves over time. I've been doing this show solo only because I kind of have to. It's not like you can just get co-hosts to show up free every night for long format shows that get nerdy on Second Amendment and gun stuff. So in an attempt to make it not just me talking all the time and bring people on that are useful and I want to share their whys and their hows, we've been doing interviews on Monday. And now what I'm trying to do is evolve it a little bit further. And 3 of the weeks we'll do new interviews. And on the 4th week, we'll bring everybody back, or at least invite everybody back and kind of cross some streams. Well, hopefully we'll be interviewing a variety of people, not just to be a variety, but to shine a light on some of the areas of Second Amendment or our gun community that don't get that very often. And then ideally bring everybody together so that they can meet each other, collaborate, share some resources, and just have a chance to chat where the focus is on just the conversation and not news of the day or 10 minutes, tell us your story and get out. That being said, I'm going to shut up. I've been talking for a bit. We've got Sharon here tonight, who's been joining us on the regular. I'm going to keep inviting Sharon and Clover. It's a little bit late for Clover. We're kind of cheating by being on the West Coast, so it's only 9 o'clock for us, but we'll keep inviting a couple of people that are activists full time, and then, I've been activists a lot, and then, like I said, the interviewees. And we've got I've got about 8 invites out tonight, kind of last minute. All right, now I'll shut up. So thanks, Sharon, for joining us.
Always enjoy coming on to this and
Oh,
everything
what
with
happened?
you.
Did I lose you, or did your audio go?
I don't know. Is it still there? Am I still here? Can everybody hear me?
I mean, I hear that you're there, but it definitely lost volume. I don't know if I did something.
Let me go ahead and sign out and come back in and see what happens. I will be right back. I'm going to go ahead and type this message in too. So it doesn't look like this, like I am being recorded. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, here we go. All right, let's see. Can people hear me okay now? Let me know. Testing.
Oh, now I'm muted. Sorry, that didn't help. Yeah, that's way better.
Okay, yeah. It looks like I'm trying to get the camera hooked on too, and it decided to flip over on that a little bit. So let me go ahead and get that going. Let me get it. Oops, it will not stay there. So we'll put it over here. So thank you everybody for patience. Really appreciate that. And let's see if it decides to show up. Yes, here we go. Hi everyone. So yeah, I have been involved with 2A for nearly a decade. And unfortunately, as it's been mentioned on the program, that I am retiring from that for medical reasons. So hopefully everything is going to, let's blur the background a little bit. Y'all don't need to see my husband in the background. There we go.
Right.
And hopefully we can get information out to individuals who need it so that they know what to do, to how to become an activist, how to be an activist, and how to work to defend your personal rights and everything for that. So that's pretty much where I've been happy to join on this. So yeah, and the new
I don't
bunny.
want to leave you hanging, but I want to interrupt you because I'm going to start taking some notes, and I got 2 things taking notes of, so that's why I'm saying stuff so it doesn't go too far before I start losing all my note stuff or my ideas or things that I wanted to make a point of. So the first question I was going to ask was, okay, now I can say your first point there, becoming an activist. I was going to say, I don't know which one to start with. I'll let you pick which one we're going to start with. But just to answer, to like interrupt your statement there about becoming an activist, I was going to say there's not like a rule book. There's certainly not directions. So I think part of what I'd like to get across to people is that there's no rule book and there's no instructions, and it's going to suck sometimes. Every once in a while, it's super awesome, and it's like, wow, this is why I do it. This is really neat. Sometimes you don't even get to be involved with that, but you know that's happening, and you're like, wow, this is pretty neat. Like I know something important just happened right now. And to some extent, being an activist is just being an assist, right? Like helping and being the cheerleader. And I guess I was going to say that, and then my first question before that interruption was going to be, so kind of like what we were talking off here. I was before we started the show up, I was talking about how I was watching the Polite Society podcast earlier, and they had asked for suggestions for guests on that show. And that's a show that's run by, I don't know how it works, but Paul is the media guy for Second Amendment Foundation, and then Polite Society does a daily bullet, they do a weekly bullet, and then they also produce some of the things like the Gun Rights Policy Conference streaming, and I know they do Amanda Suffolk's Eye on the Target Radio production on YouTube side at least. So I know that Paul's doing a bunch of things, but anyway, he asked who he should bring on, and I was thinking immediately Phil Smith from NAAGA, because they're just about to have open enrollment for their first convention, which kind of got put off with all the stress of the last couple of years. Plus, I really want to see, here's the thing. There's NAGA and there's NAGR. And NAGR sucks. NAGA is awesome. So I like NAAGA so that I don't say it the other way, because it gets confusing with the other one that sucks and makes a bunch of money and gets people fired when they bring it up. So I'd like to see Second Amendment Foundation at least become in the round, like be aware of the NAAGA. But then, well, I had a bunch of options, so I don't want to get too much into what I mentioned, but that got me to thinking, who would be cool to see collaborate, or what kind of worlds would be cool to mix? So my question was, to start off the show tonight, would be for you, if you had if you had the matchmaking wand or whatever it is, and you got to take a column of people from one column and a column of people from the other column that are currently in the Second Amendment, who would you pair up? Like, from your experience, like, who would you like to see as, not necessarily like teamed up permanently, but for like a couple of issues, who would you like to see as superhero team in 2A? And did you say maybe a task or something?
Um, just for spreading the word, I'd love to see NSSF support and help fund Kids Safe Foundation.
Yeah, and that's a big one. I'm going to put that in my notes so we can dig into that one. But there's a difference between Kid Safe and what is theirs?
Project Child Safe.
Project Child Safe, which is two separate, completely different goals. So that would be awesome. Yeah, to see them incorporate or fund.
I would like, because Project Child Safe is a great program, but it's a very it's not a active dynamic, meaning it's not a to me, it's more of a passive type of a thing. The materials are there so that people can use them and things like that. People have used them to the sense that the antis have actually used that and co-opted and stolen, plagiarized from Project Child Safe.
Literally picked up the materials that the firearms industry builds, creates, has made, and then puts them on their table as if they've had something to do with
not
it. And they're
just their
offering
table. Their Be Smart program has openly plagiarized Project Child Safe. So not just like putting it on their table, having the locks and everything else that they got from the NSSF, which is great. I mean, the stuff is there. The NSSF puts it out there for use. Be Smart and the organization that runs it have plagiarized it. And where I actually have from, I believe it's from Louisville, Kentucky, or something like that. One of the local newspapers had a photograph of one of the Be Smart instructors mishandling a firearm, even though it was, I believe it was a blue gun, holding it up incorrectly, unsafely. And on the bottom in the background, you could see the documentation, the slides and everything else that they were using. And they had their Be Smart icons and everything else on the top. And on the bottom of the slide, you could see Project Child Safe clearly along the bottom.
And they win both ways with that, because they can be yahoos and crazy, and then it just reflects poorly on the one that they're plagiarizing and stealing from.
Yeah, it does, because people don't then, when we say like, oh, here's the actual material. Oh, well, we saw it over here. I'm like, no, they stole it. Oh, why are you so against making sure the kids are safe? That's not making kids safe when you have someone mishandling the firearm, mishandling, holding the firearm dangerously, flagging themselves with it when they're holding it. And yeah, that's not a good thing. So, and I believe he's going to try to join us in a little bit, and that would be Derek from Kids Safe Foundation. Does amazing work. I believe his total, and he can correct me when he comes on, he's done outreach to over 26,000 children already. That's amazing. And I have seen the results of his work personally. The next one that I would love to see hand in hand is probably, as a team, is probably DC Project with, as a combination with Trenchwork Chronicles, another, I believe it's Derek who runs that also, and Kevin Dixie's No Other Choice, to get into the communities that are just now learning about that. Wait a minute, I am allowed to, the Second Amendment does cover for me. The First Amendment covers for me. So does the Second. That would be an interesting project to see. an interesting team to work together. So
So
those
when
are
you're
my two.
talking about trench work, that's like the Kids to Kings, and then
The
we're
Kids, the
talking
Kings, and several of the other ones that do that, and they are actually going into the inner cities to talk to the young children, to the young men and women, to give them the education. And I know there was a an event
is it
that
a mod
that
style, like let's
very
just
similar. Yes.
improvise a class, or
Hmm.
I get the impression it's more like a scheduled class that people show up because it seems like there's
Yeah.
people sitting and that kind of thing.
It is a kind of a scheduled class, but just to have the information and to DC Project has, to me, the outreach to the politicians and things like
Well,
that.
that's what I was going to ask. So if we're talking um, Kids to Kings, and with KD, you're probably talking like his
His
Aiming for
aiming
the
for the
Truth,
yeah,
and now
yes,
the Greenwood, which is a location, a facility to give those resources a place, right? So
hmm
what I was going to ask is, are you talking DC Project, which is lady from each state going to the representatives at the national level, and in groups of five meeting with those representatives as five female representatives of gun ownership in 2020, well, since 2016, so for the last 7 years they've been meeting up like that, and then even bigger at the local level doing the similar thing. So basically becoming a resource for the representatives, in other words, a
both.
resource that they can call, and
Yes,
an example of a gun owner, and then someone who's not quite a lobbyist because it's more of like a real person, but then also they are available for testimonials, and they've been superstars as testimonials. So my question is, explaining both of them now, would it be the part of DC Project where they'd get more reps from the, like saying like the areas where like there's not, or there hasn't been much representation with FFLs and with gun ownership and with education and outreach and stuff? So like more DC Project members from these areas, or are we saying DC Project's resources, or like connections
both,
with the
both,
representatives? Okay.
both, and it's also where uh, Derek and KD can help provide the information on how to reach
I think it's
how
Devin,
to
right?
yeah, it's Devin, and I apologize for not Devin.
Yeah, no worries. We're talking about a
Um,
bunch of D words, so yeah.
and for Devin, it's just like they have valuable information on how to reach a community that members of DC Project may not have that knowledge. Some of them do. I believe Mrs. L is part of that with DC Project, but to bring that into change, to bring education. If we're going to get change and we're going to work together and we're going to save this, everybody, we do need to work together. And I know there's been conflict between personality and conflicts and everything else, but we have to work together on this stuff. And yes, there are certain individuals that should not be combined. They will not be able to work together. But I do believe that DC Project, because of the outreach and everything else that they want to do, they're even down to the county level at this point with DC Project. Because I know before I retired, I was involved with some of the stuff that they were doing here in Washington State, and they're also actually getting down to the precinct level. I mean, and so what we discussed on the last episode that I was on with you last month was how the legislature and most states and everything else is set up. You're down to the precinct level. That is the smallest way you can do outreach politically in your state. So DC Project is down that small, down to that level. And that is how you're going to reach out to the communities and things like that, is at that level. So that's where I believe that Devin and Katie's information is just incredibly valuable. I know that there was a video of Katie speaking at one of Devin's programs, and he brought up a very negative stereotype that was used. He says, "Where do you want, if you want to hide something in the community, where do you hide it?" And people in the audience said, "In a book," because they know individuals were not going to read. How do you get knowledge? You read it. And going to the sources. Don't trust. And I'll say this to anybody who's listening to me. I will cite sources, back me up on it, challenge me on some of the stuff, see if I'm right. And that's what, and anybody who has done this for a while, and this is where it comes down to science is question. You always question science. You don't doctrine, which comes under religion, and religion does not necessarily mean a religious organization. It can also be a dogma. And that is a way of, hey there, hey sweetie, and you question the science. You question science, you question everything. If somebody asks you something, or somebody puts something out there and says this is what the numbers are and this is what it is, question it. And I will always say that, no matter what. So, and we have Derek, who I was just speaking about.
Hey,
Hopefully,
welcome.
good stuff.
Yes, very good stuff. Very, very
Thank
good
you.
stuff as always. And
We barely chatted at shop before, so what we're doing on this Monday show on our podcast is getting people together who are Second Amendment activists to kind of just chat and have kind of a roundtable. The question on the table is kind of came up from a Polite Society podcast chat earlier today, and they were asking
Okay.
who would we recommend to be on the Polite Society podcast, right? Paul Lathrop and them. So I was thinking about who would be good mixes, like who haven't I seen on that show. So my question to Sharon was, and now to you, if you were doing the team up, making a comic, a special run or a special edition, and you were going to team up people currently in 2A, who would you team up? Why? Or, you don't have to pick just one, but what kind of 2A team ups would you like to see?
Something
And welcome
different.
thanks for jumping in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Something different. I love different thought, different topics, and, seeing how conversations can kind of spark different directions. I think, there's a lot of diversity in what we do, and which is great. And so, I don't know. I'd like to just kind of feel you guys out. I have my own that obviously I like Kevin Dixie. I like what he does, and some others. That kind of put me on the spot. So I'll come up with something.
I had said
Yeah, no
between
worries.
you
It's not a quiz. That's just the first game we kind of threw out there to start thrashing around.
and I had said between you and NSSF. I mean, NSSF obviously has their Project Child Safe, but I know that what they, to me, that seems to be very much of a passive type of a group where you are very active in everything else. And I have seen your work. I have seen children change attitude in 2 hours.
Yeah,
Young children who come in with an attitude that they don't want to be there, they're not happy, and the next thing they know is that they hear that click and they're like, as this last one, I'm out of ammo. And that child saw some significant change in their attitude, which
absolutely.
was nice to see. And it was a positive attitude for that. And so and then
I,
there's the young woman who is the young lady who is shooting on a competition level, what she has done in a year is incredible.
absolutely.
Absolutely incredible. And with that information, and then some of the stuff, and listening to your program for the last, has it really been 2 years?
Seems like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I think it has been 2, maybe even a little bit longer. Um, Hearing your program and hearing how it's set up, I truly believe that your program needs to be nationwide. And with because if we're going to stop the highest level of firearm fatalities, need to address the issues that are going on with the youth in society, as well as the young adults, and you address that.
Thank you. And I think a lot of it comes down to is you have the bigger organizations, right? They have the money, they have the status, they have the seniority, but there's small organizations like ours that just need the help and they need the support, and that's why coming here and talking to you guys is so important, is because and Clover Tech, thank you for that. I'm looking at it for these 5 and 10 year olds and 15-year-olds. These are going to be the future of the 2A. If we do not get them, we are done. And I'll tell you, I've been yelling this from the rooftops for many, many years now, and now I start to see a change, and people are starting to come around. But without engaging in the youth, we're not going to have a 2A. Because look at all the extremes they're dealing with right now. They're dealing with genderism. They're dealing with all these different things that are happening around the country. And so there's the Second Amendment always goes to the background. So there's always some other crisis that takes priority. And so if we don't engage with them and teach them the importance of this 2A right, we're gonna lose it. So we're gonna start to age out, and that's where we're gonna be in trouble.
Well, we'll have you on to talk about the kid safe, but I guess my question would be, with all the with people that are comfortable with teaching kids and giving kids so much more responsibility, where's the disconnect? And it has to be intentional, I think. There's no way it's unintentional or accidentally missed, but where's the disconnect with having, like, don't touch this, call an adult type of training? I can understand somebody who's I don't think a kid should touch a gun, but I grew up where a police would come in at a little young age and go, if you see a gun, that's a dangerous thing, you should walk away from it, tell an adult, or something like that, because I was before Eddie Eagle. But that's my question, is if you've dealt with this end of it more, and thanks DJ for jumping in. We've got a bunch of links out there, so we'll see if people jump in tonight. I'm trying to try to keep tonight so we don't go too late, but I guess, that's my question, is where's the disconnect? How are we able to make that mental gymnastics to say, oh, we shouldn't even give them like awareness training and danger training?
That's totally the wrong way. And it's not sexy. That's the thing, is it doesn't drive the views, it doesn't drive the clicks, it doesn't sell the ad space, because it's the infrastructural work that's being done. Everybody loves the free Glock and the free blinged out stuff, which that's how the influencers, they pay their bills. But ultimately, if we're not able to reach everyone, not just the ones with guns in the home, how far are we really going to be able to take this? So that's kind of where
encouraging. I don't know. I know I'm throwing you on the spot here, and you just jumped in the middle of the night, like no notice. So I appreciate it. Let me throw questions at you, but that's interesting the way you answered that with oh, dang it! I'm trying to type and talk and then say what I was supposed to say there. But you said that that YouTubers and stuff, like, that it's not sexy, and that's fine, because that's kind of optimistic. I'm optimistic with your answer, because there's an evolution. I mean, Eddie the Eagle was never like the main thing for the NRA, right? Like, that was just a thing that the NRA attempted in order to deal with issues or something, whatever you call optics in the 80s. But and to accomplish education or whatever, but it was never designed to be like their main thing, or like, hey, we don't have to do nothing else because we're doing this. So that's good, because there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, the whole evolution of the internet, at least from my experience watching YouTube happen, nothing happened on it. YouTube started with kitten videos and kicked in the nuts, right? It was all just America's Funniest Home bloopers thing at first, and then it turned into, with the community, it turned into realms and topics, and like the makeup channels became, and the hardware channels became, and the different occupations created little areas on YouTube, and the gun community started. So all of that evolution happened with the speed of the internet and with people's comfortability with the internet. and with our ability to have communities online and be comfortable with that. So if we're talking that the I want to say awareness, I guess, of what do we call, because there's different types of gun training, right? We're talking awareness training and just like leave the gun alone. I'm going to call it Eddie Eagle training. If we're talking Eddie Eagle training just needs to get out there. I mean, you've only been doing this work for a couple of years. Eddie Eagle was just sitting there on, dusty on the shelf for decades.
It's like, I like, to be honest with you, and I don't want to, like, it's kind of a negative connotation comparing what we do to Eddie Eagle, because we're, obviously there's a little component of that, but that's just so we run parallel with their information. We don't want to contradict, right? So the thing is, we're light years beyond the Eddie Eagle program. And so the fact that, there's always this stigma that always follows me. Oh, I think we're the NRA. We're not the NRA. We're like, we're into the new millennium. And so, that's what all I would say is to bring up people up to speed, is to understand that obviously Eddie Eagle served a purpose and it was good for a time, but it hasn't been updated. It's not up to date with the way kids are learning now. It's not up to date with the technology. And that's where we come in. And so that's where we take over. And that, if they want to give us some funding, which I don't know how I would think about that. I got to kind of talk to my board, but, because I don't want to be a shill. That's the thing, is I don't want to be a shill. And I work really, really hard to keep my nose very clear of that, because I don't want the other side to say, hey, this is just another avenue for the NRA. And, obviously the NRA was great at one time, that just needs new management, and so, I think, I think we just need to make it, I think as you get some of the influencers that are getting older, they're starting to, raise children in the gun industry. And so I think it'll be more in the forefront going forward.
Well, that's a great point. And some of them will have channels, if they don't already, like if an influencer or whatever, YouTubers making a serious scratch, they're not going to let their kid have a real job when they can show them literally how to make a lot of money just playing on YouTube. So those kids are going to,
absolutely.
I would say, Derek, your program and everything else that you do is not just the next generation coming off of. When I'm talking about generation, I'm talking about within technology. So each time there's been an advancement, it's called a generation within technology. I would say with what you're doing as compared to what Eddie Eagle is and what Project Child Safe is, at least a minimum of 10 generations above both Project Child Safe and NRA Eddie Eagle. That's not downplaying those programs. You are the evolution that's come up after that by seeing what's been done and working with knowing how the kids are learning nowadays. Their programs were great to address it in the beginning and how it needed. Now, what a lot of people don't realize on some of this history coming in is that the reason why we have hunter safety education, and the reason why we have from retired Colonel Jeff Cooper was the 4 safety rules, was because accidental firearm deaths in the beginning, when they first started tracking this and everything else, were in 5 digits. They were over 15, 20, 30,000 a year. And it's through the 2A communities, the gun community, took it upon themselves and were able to reduce those numbers so that consistently year over year, and that number is dropping. And this includes all firearm fatalities that are tagged to an accident to being less than 500. And that number is continually dropping. So we in the 2A community have done that. So, and within the gun community. Now, it's a huge...
I'm going to interrupt you because that's an amazing point. That's why I like having these shows. This is awesome. So that we didn't do it. Our grandparents did that. That happened. Yes. Think about a time before there was an internet and before, you had to go get a magazine, pick it up and then read it or look at the pictures to get the information. Like there was no word of mouth, nothing. So back in the day, if you found a gun, what's the odds you're going to look down the barrel to see what's going on? Like you had no idea. There was no movies. There was no movies at one time, right? You're not going to get that from the radio. And there was just no awareness. I mean, my grandpa said when he was a little kid, if you could reach the pedals, you drove. Like there was no licenses for nothing. Things were just different back in the day. So Yeah, you're right. Like that was an intentional effort, and I'd like to give credit. I just don't know off the top of my head who, but I know that that was an intentional effort. If you look at NSSF, they've got a tremendous history of their own organization. Everyone should take a look at it because it'll show you how they created the Hunter's Orange campaign in the day when hunters were under attack for both their what they were shooting, the animal, what they were shooting with, the bullets, the ammunition being lead, the animals themselves and all their migratory and international stuff. So they had a lot of weight coming after hunters, the habitats they were shooting at, the seasons, and then the private and public land battles. And then accidents with hunters who really were just, I mean, I come from an area of the country where hunting meant get together with your friends and drink beer, bring shotguns, and hopefully everybody comes home with all their fingers. But they did not care about whatever they were coming home with. Hunters went out and harvested deers because they cared about their corn crops or whatever. Hunters was just an excuse to go fishing with shotguns. So that intentional education did get us to where we are today. And then we sit here getting mad at 300 deaths. But like you say, there was a time when that was 5 digits of accidental gun deaths in the country.
And we can, and with Derek's program, and you'll bring that up in a little bit, we have been able to lower that. And then when they talk about the whole thing with the firearm fatalities, we have to address that it's through the majority of that is suicide. And then the next level is criminal activity with gangs and drugs. Also, a very
drug war, territory, cartels. That's
part of it. A large part of that is,
that.
yes. And so when you have that, there are 2 separate programs that require distinct ways of addressing them. And Derek's program addresses 2 of those things. He addresses suicide prevention, because through the bullying and things like that, through the anti-bullying, because kids who are bullied will commit suicide. That is a known fact.
Or do crazy other things, yeah.
Or get violent.
Yes, yes.
They don't know because they don't know. So giving them options, giving them awareness is key, right?
And then the other part is also with addressing it is the accidental. And seeing the younger children, the ones who may not be at the age of handling a firearm, but know not to pick one up, that's where your program, Derek, is extremely valuable, because the interaction that you have with those kids is amazing. And to where you see the kids learning. And yes, you and I disagree on having a pink gun or a purple gun, but seeing the kids' reactions to that, yeah, I can see why that if you have children, don't have a Cerakoted gun in different husbands watching The Godfather in the background, if any of that's being picked up.
Nope,
so,
not at all. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
So little caveat there though is obviously age appropriateness, right? So a 10-year-old is going to know a little bit more than a 4-year-old if it's a pink or a purple gun, you know. So, you know, proper storage go hand in hand, right? I don't like mandatory storage when the boot of the government tells me I have to do something. I do not like that. So what I'd love to do here is change the culture where it's like the thing that we do is we take that gun off and we put it in a box, right? Because we have good, you know, technology equipment where we can get to that gun in less than a second, right? And so there's really no reason for us to leave the gun out unattended, you know, especially if our kids don't know and the gun is, you know, pink or purple, right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but obviously that's kind of, you know, we just got to change the culture. We're in a cultural war right now, right? We have people that are deathly afraid of our firearms, that do not understand our 2A rights. They want to take away our 2A rights because they think that's going to keep everybody safe. But what they don't understand is they don't understand the data. They don't understand human emotion and morality. And so they're living in this utopia that is completely, it's non-existent, because, you know, evil people are going to still do evil things even if you take away all the guns. There's still going to be guns in this country. There's, you know, 425 million estimated guns in this country. They're never going away. And so what can we do to coexist, right? So we can incentivize training. You know, obviously we should all be training right now as it is with the way our country is becoming more and more violent. You know, so we should all have our skills at a higher notch. But we all should be making sure that our kids know what not to do if they come across that gun. And we should also make it a habit of putting the gun up when it's not on our person, you know. So, that's kind of my thing.
And DGA Reloading makes a good comment on where it says, now it makes perfect sense why California just banned any two-way content for youth. Yes, that is exactly
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
And people need to be aware. There are several other states that are bringing up laws, and how one of the ways that they're addressing this, because I know they attempted to do it here in Washington, and I believe they're doing the same thing again in Oregon, is where they will ban lead ammunition. And the problem is when you ban lead ammunition, you're also banning pellets. You're banning 22 long rifle. And that is one of the ways to be able to train the youth. Because with pellets and with air guns, that is the way that they have the ability to handle a firearm or something that's addressed as similar to a weapon, because I would still consider a pellet and a air gun a weapon. May not be classified as a firearm, but it's still a weapon. And they were having it set up to where that the adult had to hand, the parent or the legal guardian had to hand over the box of ammunition to the child who was shooting during a class. That's how restrictive. Now, here's an interesting point. Anybody who lives on the Ring of Fire, lead is in the soil because of the volcanoes. Flat out, doesn't matter. If you live anywhere where there is a volcano within 300, 400 miles, you have lead in your soil, and you also have arsenic in your soil. It will always test for that. Lead is an issue, but safe handling practices for learning how to handle lead and other contaminants is critical for growing up, because there are going to be situations where you're going to come across something that, whether you're doing cleaning at your home, there are certain chemicals that you just do not mix because you will create chloramide gas. And knowing how to safely handle items that are dangerous, you learn how to not harm yourself. And that same method goes from firearms all the ways through household chemicals such as bleach, ammonia, um, Comet, things like that. And that all works around with it. But yeah, no youth shooting sports does mean no to a education and no safety education. So
What's frustrating is to see the reaction. I know it's initial reaction because it's just happening, but the reaction has been, well, now they're not going to be able to, or now this is going to be gone, instead of,
Well,
here's
they're
how
already
we
sued,
manage
so
it,
that's
or
good.
here's how,
They're already getting sued, so that's good. I'm already planning my next trip into California. We're already working on that. So
right on.
obviously, we're gonna have to do things a little bit more differently. But we can prove when we go into California, those kids need education because there's no access to education for them. And so there's a lot of guns that are made illegal with the pen stroke that the parents don't talk to the kids about, and that's what makes those kids vulnerable. And so we could actually prove that the strict gun control actually is detrimental to the youth down there, because there's no education for them. When we go in there, like I'm talking to parents in California, they're like, we didn't even think about this, because they're worried about Timmy telling a friend at school that they have something that has a 12-round magazine, and then, it's going to get to the principal, which goes to law enforcement, and the law enforcement shows up at their house. So they keep their kids in the dark when it comes to their guns there, which is unfortunate.
which is dangerous, very, very
Absolutely.
dangerous.
Super
Because
weird.
It's criminal. It should be criminal.
And that's how my family, because not having the information, even with a young age, and that's how, and hiding it away and not saying, like, you see this, do not touch this, because it was that curiosity of a young child that caused the death of one of my cousins. And that's one of the reasons why, even though I am in the process of retiring, Derek's program is going to be one of the programs that I'm still going to be involved with, because I do not want any other family to go through the heartache that my father did. And because he carried that with him until he died. And that's the reason why my sibling and other were taught firearm safety from the beginning. I don't ever remember not knowing firearm safety. It was drilled into us from the beginning. And
And it's not like, I don't think, well, I mean, your dad had an occupation, but a lot of people's firearm training is the same as, it's not like, okay, now we're taking you out for firearms training. It was like, hey, you're going to be using the axe this afternoon. Here's some axe safety training. Oh, we're going to be using the bleach and the mop bucket, like you were talking about earlier. We're going to have some safety training. Here's what you mix and you don't mix. You know, these aren't just inert things here. So it's like, as they grow and as you experience things, right, then it becomes one of the things. So, but I think the original question I had a while ago is how do we challenge and change the current situation where it's okay to talk to kids about just about anything and it gets people all upset, and then except for, you know, anything about being aware and safe about guns. But before I'm gonna let everybody cook on that, I wanted to say thanks again to DJ for jumping in and just play host here, and just to keep some consistency, ask DJ same questions. If you were going to team up, super team, or a team up, what am I trying to say? A comic book team up of 2A currently in 2022, who would you team up? And then I guess that was the only question I was asking.
Well, to begin with, my mind immediately went to people who are already involved in the Second Amendment activism. So the first dream team I would have would be Maj Touré, Diana Muller, Chris Chang, and Massad Ayoob. Now, if you look at the makeup of the nationality of those folks or of their ancestors, there's a reason for that. Underrepresentation. My second one would be, and this is a dream team, and it actually has a person who is a member of a U.S. Olympic dream team in basketball, Karl Malone. I think that there would be good purpose in having celebrities that we could rely on consistently. Karl is one who has spoken up for, not advocated necessarily, gun ownership and safety. Also, Miranda Lambert, there's a musician, female. James Hetfield, he's guitarist, lead singer for Metallica, another person in music. Samuel L. Jackson, an actor who carries himself, or said that he does. And then Lauren Boebert. She's kind of my dark horse on that list. And I guess that's because some of us still do look up to a few politicians, G. And that's what I got.
To add on to that list, I would say would be some of the new media individuals, would be Tim Pool. He is somebody who I have been watching for some time, and he has changed from an individual who says, oh, you should have classes, or there should be a waiting period and everything else. And watching him change his mind as he became more and more educated on the process of what it is to be a firearms owner in this country, he now believes that NBCs are under the Second Amendment, and every individual should have has the right to own one of those. So individuals who aren't aware, NBCs are nuclear, biologic, and chemical weapons. He says that the government owns it, private citizens should be able to have the right to own it. I'm still mixed on that particular one because there's some issues when it comes to self-defense usage on something and the dealing with innocence. But yes, if the government has it, yeah, the individual should have it. So there's just a lot of individuals who have come out recently within the last 2.5 years who have changed their minds, seeing how society has changed. And I've even seen Europeans come out and saying, don't give up your guns, Americans. And Canadians, the same way. The Canadians, and also individuals who live outside of Mexico City, same thing. There's one gun store for civilians in Mexico, I believe, if I remember, and that's in Mexico City itself. And it's extremely difficult for a civilian to legally purchase a firearm there. So there's some great international support also for this. I think it's the FGC-9 that's currently being printed during the civil war that's currently ongoing in Myanmar or Burma, depending on what's, I think it's Myanmar, that's currently going on. And some of the advancements in 3D printing that's happening is happening from Europe, feeding that information and signal down to Myanmar so that they can defend themselves against a junta, against a military dictatorship. So there's a lot of people who we can look to how do we change minds. And to address what DJ said is you have so many people who come from communities and everything else that have been marginalized historically that are now speaking up, and that's where the power is. And it's also why the powers that be want to silence those speaking out. Sorry for the rant.
No problem. It sounded like I was just going to say back to DJ's picks there, and then your additions really, is that you did more like a Justice League, a 2A Justice League. So not so much a group of people brought together to do a comic book 2-issue run to accomplish something, but more like you'd like to see them together to accomplish things as a team as they come.
Yeah, absolutely. And like pairing up normally, and well, not normally, I am absolutely not a person who takes my advice or my direction from celebrities, be they from music, television, film, wherever it is. However, the appeal, the mass appeal of those folks, I think would reliably increase awareness. People are going
celebrities in tow to like all behind with megaphones and speakers and say whatever we tell them. Like I don't want any of them in front saying they lead the way, like they don't. But if they want to come afterwards and say stuff again louder, that's awesome.
So with the examples I offered, then I guess move Lauren Boebert up to those who are already around and insert some other celebrity. So you would have the lead team, Maj and Diana and Masad, and then you'd have those that the general public would be aware of. And that is an interesting way to blend things as well. People are drawn to a name, but listen to the voices who can speak more intelligently about things. That way, both the needs, kind of there's more than two needs, but both sides of that coin would be covered. So you'd have somebody who people are interested in hearing just because of their fame, and then someone they're interested in hearing if they have never before because of the things that they're actually saying.
Kind of like, hey, listen, and all the applause, and then like, and now listen to this guy, he's super important, or listen to her because she's really got something interesting to say, right? Like, be the shoehorn or the person on the street who brings them in.
Absolutely, because if there's
already what this person says.
Yeah, if somebody famous is advocating that we pay attention, that the populace pay attention to someone else's voice, they're going to do it. Not just based on the merits of the speaker who they be introducing, but because they are lending their support. It's an odd arrangement we have in the United States, but if we can take that into consideration and use that in some way, even in this hypothetical, I think that'd be genius.
Well,
so my question is how do we normalize it when we don't need a celebrity to celebrate a 2A right? Like we put a lot of, in like the 2A community, we put a lot of stock in false prophets. And so how do we normalize it so everybody across the country, we all have the same exact right? How do we make it normal for us to want to either exercise it or support and protect it?
Well, Derek, I think that the things that many of us do now already, and your group is a great one as an example. It's not that I wish to substitute so much or to defeat your suggestion of the reiteration. Well, how do we do this though? Kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think it is the increase in message, and I'm not going to go with by any means necessary sort of thing, but with the ideas in place already and them being.
No,
better.
No.
Okay, go ahead. Then.
You're just going off on tangent, so I'm cutting you off intentionally. But I love the Derek's. How do we? I'm going to say this to answer your question and also address DJ, I think. But how do you normalize guns? I was just putting something out there the other day, and I wish I could remember. Oh, can't remember. I'm going to give it to Rob Morse because I can't remember who corrected me, but somebody put in there, how do we normalize guns again? Because guns were normalized, right? So there was a direct effort to take guns off the table. Why? Because they wanted to get individual liberty off the table, and what we've got here with freedom and liberty, they wanted to get rid of that. And one way to do it is to get rid of a scary thing that your neighbors had and you didn't care about, right? As soon as you can take that scary thing away from your neighbors and it's gone from our culture for a little bit, it's never going back in. At least that's what they thought. So to answer your question, to normalize guns again, we realize that we've been marginalized intentionally and we attack that. So I'm saying I don't agree with you, DJ, because we don't go louder in order to be heard. That doesn't work. We actually get quieter and we get more aware, and then we get better. And that's education, so we can be more strategic. I don't even think we need superheroes or celebrity either. I love that concept of challenge and the whole idea of celebrity, because I was kind of saying the same thing. Like, if they want to come along after and take credit, I don't care. But we certainly don't want to have them as part of our strategy, other than to keep them as like the people that come in and have a party after. But I just wanted to emphasize that. I think that we do it by realizing who's been marginalizing us, and that's being done. I mean, it's something that I don't think I will not in 2022 have these conversations. You want to know what we haven't done? Address the handicapped population, right? The differently abled and the elderly. You want to know what we haven't done is address the Hispanics, right? If we want to talk about what stuff we haven't done, I'll have those conversations, but we're not going to talk about what we haven't done when we have had 7 to 12 years of effort in these directions already. Right.
Well, G-Webs, I'll tell you this, and Derek and I are smiling on this, because I was honored and humbled to be part of the latest event that Derek did in Centralia, Washington. And you were talking about being disabled and being able to do something, where he taught a young man who was legally blind. Now, people need to realize, just because you are legally blind does not mean you cannot see. There are legally blind has a very, very specific definition, and I don't care that Wikipedia and such have tried to change what a definition means. The words have specific meanings. Somebody who is legally blind may still be able to see light, shadows, and still be able to function in society, but just differently. And seeing this young man, and Derek, you will explain it better than I can be, but it was inspiring that weekend. Absolutely inspiring. And I know you've posted it on Twitter and Instagram recently. So you need to talk about him.
It's because it's something that's really special to me, and it's because for a while I thought there was a glass ceiling, and then I get to that glass ceiling and I shatter that glass ceiling because I didn't necessarily think it was possible, just with my experience, to his credit and his family's credit, they came and they entrusted me with that first class, and we hit it off, and we want to teach him how to shoot. And so, and from that first initial class, which it was different than we typically do, is, I don't necessarily advocate kids touching guns, but in his situation, his eyes were his fingers. So we had to actually teach him how to read the gun and learn where the trigger guard was, where the hammer was, where to keep his finger away from him if he ever came across one in the home. And from that, this great friendship began with the family, and then they joined us on the range. And so we did everything we could to set them up for success. And I made a magazine where I put Braille on it. So I taught myself Braille. So as I'm learning this process to present the information to him, I've learned how to be a better advocate. And people say activist. I prefer advocate, just because that's how I view what I'm trying to do. And which there's no wrong term here. It's just the way you consider yourself. And so I put Braille on a magazine. I met him for dinner, and I taught him how to load this magazine ahead of time. So when he showed up for the class on the Sunday, He was because I didn't want him to get frustrated. I didn't want him to get left behind with the other kids that could see. And so I treated him just like every other kid. We just put a little extra work into it. And from there, he showed me how to do the Rubik's Cube. He did the Rubik's Cube in record time. This kid's phenomenal. And then when he showed up for the class, we showed him went through the whole process. And when we got to loading the magazine, he took the magazine and he loaded it faster than any of the other kids there. And that was and we were off to the races. And so this young man was just like any other kid that I've ever met. He has a real special spirit, and he's a go-getter, and I really relate to that. And so we had a great time on the range. He shot really well. I mean, some of his groups were like this, and it was amazing. He had a dedicated spotter, and we had the gun on a tripod, and so we try to make everything as safe as we possibly can. And when I made some investments too, I bought a new camera system that's going to help him. So when he comes back and he wants to join the rifle team now, so that's where we win.
We've got a couple of shooters that are low vision or blind, and what they get is the clap keychains where they'll beep when they clap, and you tape those to the target for them.
Oh, cool!
Try that.
Yeah. So I've seen some tone stuff. They said that could work, and then there was like a little vision thing that mounts to the scope that kind of is supposed to help with the spotter. So we're going to try that as well.
That's cool. Something with like an audible, like a Geiger counter, like back in the days when you'd have the thing looking for the spy or whatever, and it'd like beep louder when it gets on target.
Yeah, there's something similar to that. That's what we invested in, and ultimately it's just about getting him. And once we do it for him, then we can replicate it, right? Then we can open up a class and have 10 kids that are abled. I call them abled.
They're just differently abled, but they've got as much interest in doing whatever as any kid. You know about shooting parasport? I'll link you to shooting parasport. It's the international.
Oh, Paralympics. Yeah.
Well, for shooting sports though. So I'll link you to them on Instagram. Maybe there's some resources back and forth.
Awesome. I know several instructors. The individual who runs Halo Defense, he actually has an active team that he teaches those who are deaf. And people get really freaked out because nobody has hearing protection, but nobody can hear when they're on the range anyway. So that's a very interesting, and this is the whole thing of, can we teach people who aren't the typical human being and outreach to them? Yes. I've seen as I've gotten older and with some serious injuries to where I can no longer walk on uneven ground without support. So I walk with a cane, and flat surfaces or my knees just tire because of injury. Don't ever screw up your knees. That's the best thing I can say. I have I require assistance to be able to walk. I have trained with my cane. There is video either on my Instagram or through Twitter, and some others have it also, where you can see the cane swinging from my arm. And as I'm doing a speed shooting competition. So in an event where there's a situation where I may have to unfortunately defend myself, that cane may be hanging on my arm. I better know how to handle a weapon safely and be able to aim it with my cane. The same thing with my vision. I am not even on a 20/20 scale. Never have been. Yet I knew that there are ways to be able to, where I see shapes without my glasses and shadows and light. My focal point's less than 2 inches from my nose. But I also know that, I can identify shapes and hearing. So individuals who aren't 100% in all their senses, the sense that is deficient, their other senses are stronger. And one of the more amusing things that happened with Derek's event was the young man was fitted with the hearing protection, and these are the ones that have the microphone on them. So either, I'm not sure which company they were, but so many of them make them where that you can hear the noises and hear conversations. And his mom was like, "Can he hear anything?" And so I said very quietly, from about 20 feet away, "Can you hear me?" And he answered very clearly, "Yes, I can hear you." And I was behind him. So seeing stuff, so parents of children and young adults who aren't aware of what's available for safety items, this was an eye-opener for her to see that her son would be able to learn how to safely handle a firearm. And one of the things that Derek didn't bring up on this, and as this is as somebody who grew up around firearms and who I've talked to when all the times at, say, the different pride events when I was still involved with Pink Pistols, is when people who would come up who were very anti-gun, and the conversation came up, it's like, "Well, I don't want to learn it." I'm like, "I'm not asking you to buy a firearm. I'm asking you to learn how to safely handle it so that if there's a situation where you see a firearm and and it's there and you don't want it to be misused, do you know how to secure that firearm?" And that's part of the conversation to bring up with people. Is like, if they don't want to have a firearm, they don't want to have anything to do with it, respect that. Bring up the safety training as a way that they can make sure that that firearm is not mishandled by anyone. So that even if it is taking a 5-gallon bucket, turning it upside down, putting it on top and sitting on it until somebody comes who knows firearms safe, who knows how to handle firearms, is able to be there. But at least they would be able to pick that firearm up and put it to a safe location and not have their finger on the trigger. As we all know, instinctively, your finger will go instinctively to that location on that firearm. And that's the danger. So,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. Go ahead, Derek.
I was just looking
Yeah,
at the
this
chat.
is informal. Boarding house.
I
Go ahead and cut
I
it.
saw in the chat there's a disabled shooter. So Parkinson's shooter. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He is very accomplished and he has Parkinson's disease, and that's how he treats. And he's got a great mission there. Yeah. And so I definitely would recommend you checking him out. And just kind of seeing his on how he treats the Parkinson with endorphins from pressing the trigger. It's pretty cool.
It's amazing. It is absolutely incredible to watch his tremors being where he's going through an episode with the tremors. He picks up that firearm and the tremors go away. They're gone within milliseconds. So yeah, there are some definite, and then there's also Battle Buddies. And Battle Buddies is a program set up for competition shooting, primarily for veterans that came through who have lost limbs during combat, as a way to do 2-gun and 3-gun shooting. So that is another one for anybody who is disabled to look at. And they'll actually have individuals who are setting up the course design, run that course in a wheelchair, so that they're aware of, wait a minute, this is or isn't going to work for the individuals who are going to want to participate. And the interesting thing with Battle Buddy that I thought was amazing is that the person pushing the wheelchair, because some of them will have an assistant push the wheelchair, some of them don't, can either participate and shoot also during the competition, or just be there to help run the chair for the individual. Or some of them will push the chair themselves. So there's a lot. There actually is quite a bit of programs that are out there. They're just
Some exist, but there can be definitely more. There can be definitely more. IDPA, IPSC should both be doing, like, your left arm is out of commission. Go, right? You can't walk in this one. Go.
Yeah.
And we could be doing that at every stage. I just wanted to interrupt because I also wanted to say that Shaky Dave's, in addition to being one to champion, I keep fiddling with my mic cord. Sorry if that's messing with my mic. I've been told that's messing with my mic. But he champions the idea of therapy, shooting for therapy. But then with all he's got going on in his world, he's also out there being an activist, right? He's out there going to events and representing and getting that message out there by being person, right? Not just us talking about it, but being out there and representing all those others. And that's something that Derek brought up before, but I'm just going to kind of throw it out there just to put a bullet point on it. But shooting is therapy for not just physical, but mental, like a lot of veteran issues, like you mentioned, but, you know, mental health and just transition from periods of life or whatever. Shooting, individual competition where you can get out. It's like fishing, right? You can go out and it's almost like meditation, except you have something to focus on. Okay, I got to take this shot. I can do the breathing, and there's a lot to that often goes unlooked and unappreciated. And then people that want to marginalize us will say, "Oh, you're just fetishizing guns or violence, or you just don't care," or something. When they don't understand the elements to it or the facets to it that are so different to so many people and so valuable to so many people.
And I think that's where Jake Wilkerson's program from Walk the Talk America through his Zephyr Wellness comes into play. And that's where, hey, as the professional can say, this is the benefits that we are seeing, not just with the suicide prevention that he heavily focuses on, but the way that the fact that we all know, all of us here who have handled firearms know that when we're handling firearms, when we're getting ready to shoot, we are forcing ourselves to push everything out of our mind, no distractions. And that's something for somebody who has never handled a firearm, they don't truly realize the fact that you have to force the distractions, force the issues of the day and everything else out of your mind in order to be able to shoot well, even shoot halfway decently. And it's I know for myself, whenever I'm handling a firearm, I'm actively thinking in my mind while I'm doing everything else, the 4 safety rules. What's going on? Am I safe? Am I being safe in handling my firearm? That's going on in the background of my head while I'm also thinking about the process that I want to do. And it's definitely been proven that with us as humans, we have several layers of function when it comes to thinking. And where if you're reading and your mind, when they talk about it, when your mind wanders, when you're reading or you're watching TV and things like that, that wandering actually can be controlled. And that's when we're being focused on what we're doing, we're taking that part that wants to wander and bringing it into the higher level of operations of what we want to do. So that's something to also be aware of. So if you know
that's more than just like therapy, then that's like usually actual healing.
Yes, you actually are forcing your mind to focus on something. So that's one of the reasons a lot of the veterans programs and things like that have come around, because they know that the individual has been trained and those safety rules have been drilled so heavily that it helps bring that to the forefront and take over the part that wants to be distracted. Anyone who, and this is more for the segment of society that may not be being very negative to firearms. So anyone who does anything in the fiber arts, and whether it's knitting, crocheting, spinning, things like that, many of them know that they can handle a heavy conversation, watch a movie, read a book or something like that while they are doing part of their craft. Addressing firearms that same way, to where that the safety becomes that knitting, the repetition, repeating the safety rules over, making sure that they know them inside out, upside down, and then you can focus on what you're doing. They realize that you have forced your mind away from the distraction. How is that good for children and for young adults? It teaches them a way of clearing their mind so that they can address some of the issues that's been going on without distractions, because you're not going to have your phone, you're not going to have the internet, you're not going to have tablets. You're going to be focused on a specific thing, and you can't be distracted, because when you are distracted, that is when an accident happens. And that ties into what Derek does a little bit, because and I will say this for anybody who's in Washington State, the next time Derek's program is here in November, come down. It's in Centralia. Yes, I know it's a drive from Seattle and Tacoma. It is worth it. Volunteer. Come see how his program does. Bring the kids. The repetition and how he does this works to reinforce what's being trained at home, clarifies it, and gives the parents and the guardians an additional way to approach the subject of to be safe. And this is also in changing culture. So one of the things that DJ brought up with like celebrities and things like that, and what you brought up also on G-Webs with this, how guns were made evil was through the media that was consumed, through television, through radio, through songs, through movies. That is how firearms were made dangerous and things like that with it. And so that is, in order to change that, we have to have positive things, and that's done, as you were saying, G-Webs, quietly, and then you just build it up from there. So if you see a program that's really good that shows firearms handling in a good manner, mention that, tag a few people online as a way to build up, hey, this was a really good way, a little good movie short or television, things like that. I mean, we all talk about how heat shows the realities of a gunfight because it was well done and it was accurate. Also shows how the criminals were using it, but you know what? It shows how the reality of a firearms are using. So wait, Centralia is on fire? From Guns and Water, from what? Is it another wildfire that they're on fire?
I think I did see something about a fire, but I don't know if that was in California.
Yeah, because there's a Centralia, California. There's also Centralia, Washington, and I'm talking about Centralia, Washington. California is burning. That unfortunately does not surprise me. There's lots of areas. So this is Centralia, Washington. No, yeah, it is Centralia, Washington. Pennsylvania. Yeesh.
Oh, I don't know where that is.
Yeah,
Hard
I'm
to
not
tell.
sure where that for that part yet. So this is Centralia, Washington. I'm on the West Coast. I've got family in Pennsylvania. I got family all across the Eastern Seaboard. No surprise on that. So, but Derek's program is, and I will say this, is one of the best programs that, sorry if the movie is coming in through the sound. It really is a program to be supported, and people should pay attention. And if you are in Washington State or in Oregon, because I know you do a lot of stuff in Albany too, don't you?
I do. Yeah.
Are you? And I forgot to ask, are you ever out in Bend?
I don't get to Bend as often as I would like. Obviously, we had what happened last night. I feel that I need to go over there and plant a flag and offer assistance and offer, solutions, opposed to the same drivel where we need to ban this and restrict that and regulate this, and you know what I mean. So
there's an individual who lives in Bend that's a friend of ours who helped us with the fight in 594 and 1639, the fight against it, who now lives in Oregon, in Bend, Oregon. And so he's the individual that I mentioned to you before. And
Yeah,
I've
I need to
also
get over
mentioned
with
him. I also mentioned it to him. And so the two of you will, for that. And this is the whole thing. Going back to the whole thing on advocacy and activism. This is the whole thing where people know more than what they realize. With who I've been able to speak with and everything else over the years, I know now, because of how situations and lives change, I know an individual now who lives in Bend, who's from Bend, Oregon, and who lives there. and hearing about the sad situation that happened there the other night, who's also with Oregon getting ready to fight a massive gun control initiative that's going on. And I've been contacted by several individuals who live in Oregon, because you've asked me also, Derek, about some information on this. And this is the time to bring this up. What's happening in Oregon is significant, and it will be brought to Washington, and it will be pushed from Oregon into Nevada and then into Arizona. So just because it happens in California and it stays, or there's lawsuits, don't believe that there's not fighting going on against these bills and against these initiatives that are trying to strip rights. They will try to force bills through or initiatives through, even with Bruin being decided, saying like, well, it's the voice of the people. Well, the voice of the people thought loving the laws in Virginia for interracial marriage was good, and Loving v. Virginia said no. So just because the majority votes for something, that does not negate the rights being restricted when it is a natural right. And
one thing to think about this measure that's on the ballot here in Oregon is it's proposed. It's written by Giffords. Giffords has $10 million ready to go to push this thing through. So what's happening is this is going to, and I've seen a little bit of a shift. I'm seeing, Moms Demand Action's kind of in the background now, and I'm getting more stuff from Giffords, and I think they're trying to be the big badass on the block, and so it's going to go everywhere. If they get a foothold here, and then in the clergymen that are pushing it here in Oregon, they said it's the most progressive gun control in the country. So it talks about having an ID to buy a firearm, also restricts my magazine capacity. It doesn't do a single thing for criminals, but it makes any 30-round magazine that I have, it makes it a Class A misdemeanor, and so it's
And one of the things they talked about that you brought up with moms, we're not going to see moms coming out for some stuff recently because their SEC filings. Now, people need to realize every single nonprofit is required by federal tax law to file their financials every year. And Moms Demand Action is classified as a 503c or 5 or whatever it is, for being able to accept tax donated funds for their program. And it was just shown that the majority of their funds that were raised went to payroll, not to the programs that they're claiming to support. So they're getting some serious heat in the media from that and on the financials. Have to thank Jill from Mom at Arms for that one, because she's the one who broke that story. Giffords does not have that baggage yet. Oh, and yeah, I have also been kind of saying with the whole lawsuits going after Smith & Wesson and Ruger and Daniel Defense, why aren't people going after Shannon Watts when she was the head of marketing from Monsanto, and one of the products that she pushed was Roundup? So she's actually been directly tied to more death and illness than firearms have outside of war with Roundup and with the chemical destruction that way. So, yeah.
He's just a great person.
So, yeah, and we do have it confirmed that Shannon is that individual who was with Monsanto. So people need to remember that. Some of these individuals who were tied with the anti-human rights groups, as I call them. I don't like calling them gun control, because gun control is maintaining the safety of that firearm so that it doesn't get misused or things like that. So, and then you have Gabby Giffords, who, gee whiz, and I think you'll remember this, that whole incident was preventable, because she was warned not to go to that. She was warned to have better security. And she was warned that she had a stalker who was obsessed with her. And there was a lot of things that was a horrible tragedy that people lost their lives with. But the whole thing with that, Giffords was notified, and she was also getting ready to be redistricted out of her district based on Arizona politics. So there was a lot going on.
Based on the fact that she doesn't even live in Arizona. She lived in Texas, and she was on her way out. It was like one of her last speeches as anything.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff going on with that. And that individual who shot her, unfortunately, Arizona does not have good mental health care. And his parents were trying to get him committed for several years. And that is a whole other situation and another conversation for another night.
No, but it's not, because that is Tucson. So I live next
you're
to it,
not far from there. Yeah.
And that we had to deal with the repercussions of it, and we all do, because now she's trying to become the new Shan. With Roundup, like you say, and she's not working like that. We know that those messages change all the time. The Giffords Law Centers was originally in 1993 the Legal Committee Against Violence, which shifted its name a couple of times before 2016 when it merged with Gabby to become the Giffords Law Center to prevent gun violence. And now it's already changed its name since then. And I don't know.
Such a Sarah Brady thing to do.
Well, I don't think that with 2022, with the resources we have available on the national level organizations that have resources to the tens of millions of dollars, we should have any question about who all these people are. There's not that many players. I can show you what I, an individual, have come up with as a list of people on our side. Why can't one of our organizations chart what the other side's doing? I'm scared shitless to do it because all they got to do is swat me. You know, nobody's going to swat me for showing up our side. But yeah, that side is heinous, and it's all kinds of twisted. But what you're talking about, as far as, you know, she created a situation where she is now capitalizing and exploiting the situation, right? I'm just gonna leave it like that. And she's become a hero on the other side while doing it with her husband, who's now a senator here, the guy who tried to buy a gun with an out-of-state license in 2016 at a gun shop that owes me $360. Let's not forget that gun shop owes me $360. Whenever you look that up, you can go, oh, Mark Kelly tried to buy a gun in Arizona at a Tucson gun shop. That's the one that owes gun websites $360. All right. So that being said, they're ignoring the mental health, which is the issue. The tool could have been a vehicle. The tool could have been a stink bomb. The tool could have been something that caused a chaos and people hurt each other running away. The tool is what they're using to distract from the actual issue, which is, like you said, Arizona has an issue with mental health. And part of that is because we have an international border with a country that has all kinds of ties with, I don't know how many people coming across in conditions that are not able to be verified or aware, like that we just don't even know. That's just one level. Since we have to deal with a giant international border, one of the largest in the world, international borders with another country, with a political issue with illegal and legal immigration across the border, not to mention a massive amount of our food comes from Mexico. Most of the fentanyl comes from Mexico. We have to forget that. And then we've got cartels. So we have a country to the south of us that doesn't allow individuals to protect themselves. So cartels run rampant, own the country, and do what they want. And that bleeds over to our hospitals and whatnot. If our hospitals can't address a hurt leg or a broken arm, how can they address mental health? So it is a big issue. And I don't want to say, well, let's not get into it, because that's how they win. And I don't want to. I'm not saying
not to get into it. I'm saying
that's how they win against us, by giving us so much to deal with.
Yeah. So G-Webs, you and I both know, because I lived in Arizona for a number of years up in Phoenix, but I know Tucson had some serious issues going on with some of the stuff going on with everything coming in through from Mexico, because you are 150 miles even closer to the border than Phoenix is. But what I'm saying is that is a conversation. That should be a dedicated conversation.
Yes, that's all. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is that should be a dedicated conversation. I'm not saying ignore it or push it off. No, that is a dedicated conversation with what's going on specifically in New Mexico, Southern California, Southern Texas, and in Arizona.
I was just trying to say that
sorry, Derek.
That she shouldn't be able to win by ignoring the mental health aspect of it, focusing on the property, and then now becoming famous, internationally famous, and famous through time, because she's taken the baton from Shan. Okay.
Well,
Sorry about that,
you know,
Derek.
I want another thing on your radar. So I set up my Google alerts. I don't know if anybody uses Google alerts. And so I get a report every day on, you know, I put in kids gun safety, kids firearm safety. I'll get you in 1 second, GGW. And so I'm getting reports, and so they've changed this narrative. So I don't get any pro gun, any news articles when it comes to safety. Everything's been about be smart. And so this Be Smart program is now to the forefront because they're using Google and all these other magazine articles to prop up this organization that it's not safety. Their idea is safety is having the parents remove the guns from the home. That's supposedly what's going to keep the kids safe. And so I just kind of want, you know, people to be aware of that and how they're trying to morph that into quote unquote gun safety, because it's not. And when it, so my questions, so kids safe in California. Yes, we've been to California. We go there yearly. And so we go there, typically it's Anderson. So it's Northern California. It's still the free part of California to an extent. It's a, you know, conservative area, you know, very, very cool place, you know, kind of rough a little bit. It's near Redding, but we go there and we spend the weekend down there and we shoot BB guns with the kids, you know, and so that might be challenged in that new law, but I'm going to go. I don't care. I'm not going to ask for permission from a tyrant. You know, I'm just going to go, and, you know, hopefully that law enforcement in that area, they know us well enough when we're down there that hopefully they will choose not to prosecute or fine us, you know, but I'm definitely, there's actually two S's in that, DJ. And so that's where we're at. You know, we have to plant the flag. You know, we have to stand firm on our convictions and our principles. And if we have to, you know, lawyer up and sue, you know.
And I think something else needs to be mentioned. You've even trained children in Hawaii, one of the most restrictive states in the country. You've been to Hawaii and you've actually trained children and been able to show that firearm safety training can be done for children in one of the most restrictive areas in the country, and which is incredible for what I feel like on this. And not many people know that, and they should, because you have been able to travel and you have been able to address some of the critical need so that it is done correctly.
Yeah, and I just got an email tonight from a reporter in Honolulu that wanted to do a story about a kid that was killed on the range over there. You know, sent me the press release, so I'm kind of going through the information, figuring out how I want to address it. I'm probably gonna. I jumped on here instead of giving him an interview because he was kind of pushy. But you know, yeah, it's definitely, we've made progress over there. Now we have a reporter reaching out. Unfortunately, it was a tragedy. There was a kid that was lost over there, and which horrific, and so we never want to see that. But it talks about where, you know, when you do not give people the opportunity to educate, right, or train, stuff like this happens. It happens to law enforcement. It happens to people that are really proficient for firearms, with firearms. You know, so if we don't educate, you know, even at a young level, and I believe it was at a Boy Scout camp, so it was a tragic thing, and so I'll probably reach out to him tomorrow and do the interview tomorrow, so I have, you know, my
Very
thoughts.
uncommon, also. I mean, that doesn't happen in generations. That's a very uncommon thing.
Well, when I was over there was a big rash of kids shooting with BB guns. There was actually a young girl that was in the hospital because she got shot in the head with a BB gun, because they don't understand the concept of a projectile and what it can do to the human body, because like their idea of teaching them is no, Kiki, you don't touch that, you know, or, you know, they don't understand, they don't teach them the cause and the effect of their actions there. And so that's what's sad.
And you have kids thinking that they can respawn,
Yeah,
or that
playing video games.
and a lot of the things, and this is something that people need to realize, and parents know this. Children under the age of 7 do not distinguish between reality and fantasy. That has been proven multiple times. And in addressing the whole thing with firearm safety is children under the age of 7 may not fully realize that the person who's gone is gone. It may not register with them, and that's the reason why programs such as Derek's are so valuable in changing the culture of safety. And to bring this whole thing together with advocacy, for when I was speaking last month with UG Webs on this, it's like if somebody is concerned about how to approach being an advocate or an activism or anything dealing with that, focus on safety training, focus on suicide prevention. Those are the three, and then dealing, and it's like it doesn't even need to address firearms or any other part of that. The fact that it addresses safety, because I know, Derek, one of your programs deals with bullying and and how to respond with bullies, because you have the bully who's either going to sadly commit suicide or commit violence. You address the bullying, you address the issue with safety, and children learn to talk to the adults that they can trust. And this isn't being somebody who is ratting or tattling or snitching or anything else. This is, hey, so and so has a
Teaching you
firearm.
how to cope. Let you understand it, right?
Exactly. Because, and this is the thing.
I was just going to interrupt too to say it's not always just those extreme examples that we're offering help and options to these kids, because just being upset, like, oh, I got bullied. Well, I guess I get bullied, and having to live a life where you think you just get bullied, like, no, you don't have to. And sometimes it's just as easy as saying to the kid, whatever, right? And then the kids get along and they're off to the races, just being kids or whatever, I'm assuming. So I think a lot of this is just to prevent the stuff that snowballs into bigger stuff potentially, right? Smooth things out, give kids these tools so that when they're younger, they know how to. And I'm guessing that nowadays kids know how to communicate and share their feelings, and they're not like.
Not entirely. No, they
No.
don't.
I'm watching too much TV or movies.
They
No.
don't.
I think we need to start off. We have to be good leaders inside of our homes, and so our kids are learning a lot on how to interact with others with the way we interact with others. And so, if we're gonna be aggressive and mean and rude, they're gonna pick up on that. They're gonna repeat that habit. And we actually stopped a school shooting here in Oregon because of a kid that went for a program, and they found a gun in a backpack on the way to school on a school bus. It was literally that close. And so what we need to do is just make sure that they understand those kids in school typically are first responders. They're going to hear a threat of somebody trying to hurt themselves or someone else before anybody else. And so if we can give them the tools to know that they're making the right decision to get help, that's how we're going to make this change. There was a shooting in Bend last night where this guy had a full-on, manifesto online for months. And he gave the date when he was going to do it. Nobody said a thing, right? So, why aren't we catching these people before they create? There's all these signs are there. We just have to get better at picking up on those signs and getting the help. So that's kind of where we're at.
And that's an important part. I mean, even an individual who is who's hurting, whether they are cutting themselves, whether they are being physically abusive to themselves, bulimia, anorexia, both are very, very, and I will be very frank with individuals. I have known young men who have died from anorexia. This is not just that's not just a female disease or female condition. Young men have been known to have anorexia, and bulimia. They have been known to go through that cycle to make weight on the wrestling team, weight for the football team, gain weight, things like that. There's a lot of things that they feel that they have pressure that they have to do because of what's going on in school, what's going on in their home life, what's going on in their social life. And they end up not knowing how to cope, and they get caught in a cycle of a catch-22 of cycle of destructive behavior. And one of
I
the
think
things,
that, just to cut you off because we're getting into the 90
Yeah.
minutes ish area, but thank you for letting me be rude. But I think too that when you look at it just number or practicality or like what's possible, if you're having a conversation with an you're trying to be an activist, you want to have this conversation that's effective with somebody who's anti our property or anti our rights or whatever we want to say, but really they're just scared of guns. Well, they're scared of guns and they don't like gun violence. Okay, so you can't get rid of all guns. We kind of know that. We'll agree on that. But you'd like to get rid of all these guns because that's going to save something. Well, what we're talking about is, when we look at the violence, it's not from the 94 million guns or the 300 million guns that are out there. It's from the hundreds or single guns that cause all the trouble. Those are being held by a few people. So what's actually an easier, what should I say, like an easier tactic to approach? Taking away the opportunity from everybody or addressing the people with the issue. And that's just a lot fewer children to deal with because it's only the children that are growing up and having these issues. So that's like all this effort that we're going to spend on trying to take away 94 million people's property or challenge 94 million people who've never done anything and have no reason to have done it to do anything, when we could take those resources and devote them to our children. What we end up with is kids that don't have violence with firearms, but in addition, they don't have violence and they don't have inclination for violence, and we have just better times, right?
Negative. Our kids are being raised by video games. Our kids are killing for points at a young age. They're being desensitized to violence with these video games. So taking away a firearm is not necessarily. They're still gonna create. If they're gonna have that evil intent because it's a learned behavior, they're still going to figure out a way to do it. They might have to.
Well, I'd say that there was always cowboy movies and there was always radio shows with cowboy action stuff, and there was this like disregard for the human being that was the opposite of the frontierman. Mm-hmm. So we've always had that element of our society, yet we didn't have the craziness. I'd rather say, let's take a look at if a kid is going to spin off, where are they going to spin off into? Something they've never even heard of, out of control, something completely new, or some mode that they've already heard of, a path that's already established, something that they can follow or attain, right? So I think we've got something there. But I just wanted to say I don't disagree with you. I just wanted to say on that, I just that little
and something that people.
I think I'm saying the same thing, that we want to help the kids. We want to help the mental health of the children, whatever the source of their angst or their stress is. We want to solve that because that's just more, I guess what I'm saying is that's just technically and easier than it is to try to address all gun owners. That's just unreasonable.
Right. And one of the things that people need to know, and that's a good interruption because, I'll build off of that. One of the things that people talk about is the whole thing of the mental health. Well, extreme risk protection orders. Well, extreme risk protection orders are not anti-2A. They're anti-due process. They're anti-4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Amendment. The Second Amendment only comes in at the end part of this. So don't be distracted by saying ERPOs or red flag laws are anti-Second Amendment. No, they are anti-due process. That's a significant difference. Secondly, extreme risk protection orders do not address the underlying cause of the issue of why that order was done. I'm not talking about the false calls on this. I'm talking about the ones where somebody is actually in a mental health crisis who needs help. Just going in and removing the firearms is not enough. They still have the knives. They still have all of the other cutting instruments. They still have all the other over-the-counter medications, let alone prescription drugs or other chemicals that are within the home that can be used for
harm or for
harm.
for attention or just inadvertently. Yeah.
So one of the things to look at on this is every state has what's known as and I think it's under Brady. It's under Brady. And Jake Wilkerson from Walk and Talk America actually has the information on this. Every state has a 72-hour hold. We've all heard about this. It's also known in California as a 5150. This allows for, it's an involuntary hold that puts an individual into a mental health under a dedicated psychiatric help where they're being watched for 72 hours. And after on that 72nd hour, they are in front of a judge with the doctors, with law enforcement, with the family, with the concerned members of the community to address if that individual needs additional help, which I believe voluntarily does not strip an individual's Second Amendment rights. It is the involuntarily that does. The 72-hour hold is not part of the 4473 that has been carved out, and that is critical and key. This also works to help a child, especially a teenager, if they need help, and people need to realize that. Not addressing the false calls on the extreme risk protection orders, the red flag laws. Yes, I know personally somebody, and I've had 3 individuals come up to me since Washington State has had the red flag laws put in, who have had false accusations done where red flag was pulled on them by the other individual lying to the courts.
Well, all right. So these are kind of new yet. So what we need to, before we get too worried about things that are in process, we got to figure out what the consequences are for these false. So if there's consequences for the false alerts, and then then the false alerts end, we don't need to be as concerned as we could be if the false alerts go through and people start going to jail incorrectly. We need to start jumping on it. But that's just a bit of a tangent from. I guess we lost Derek.
He may have had to drop out for something, and for that. So,
there he is.
but yeah, the whole thing with that, and so the individual who says the video games aren't an issue, unfortunately, video games are being used as a substitution for parenting. So yes, video games are the issue. When you have something that's being used as a substitution for parenting, and that started with my generation, that started with the older Gen X, when you had Sesame Street, an electric company, come out on PBS where the mothers could put the children in front of the TV set and go through and just watch TV while they could do whatever they needed to do. So that whole thing as a substitute parent with a television or another issue going on has been going on. And I'll be very clear, I'm in my 50s. This has been going on for over 45 years, that there's been substitute parenting. False alerts will never be prosecuted. Not quite. There have been false alerts that have been prosecuted. There have been false rape accusations who have been prosecuted. The issue is...
Well, my problem is that there's people that are going to stand... Okay, here's what I figured out, and I came up with this while I was walking, and this is the first time I'm throwing it out there. We're in a boat, right? And every once in a while, our boat gets attacked. Every once in a while, we lose some water, right? People jump in the boat, people leave, right? Some people like being in the boat, some people decide to leave. But as gun owners, we're in this boat. And we got a bunch of new gun owners on board, right? And I've asked the gun owners' rights groups before individually. I've been asking this question for a while. What's more important, bringing new Second Amendment advocates on board, or keeping our Second Amendment advocates around? And they've every single time without hesitation said, bring new advocates on board. And it drives me nuts, right? Because I don't care, but it shouldn't be the answer. But the problem is there's an unquenchable supply of new advocates. So what happens is our organizations at the national level have been set up to just experience the new, satisfy the welcome aboard, thanks for joining, welcome aboard, thanks for joining. They really, really rarely ever have to offer more than that. So they don't. And they have to keep up with the overwhelming new welcome aboard and thanks for joining. They're able to do good work, and I'm not complaining, but I am complaining because they can do more. So when we're talking about this boat analogy, there's all these gun owners and we're on a boat. Every once in a while, the boat gets attacked, and every once in a while, like an aircraft carrier comes up and threatens. Obama's 23 executive actions is the last time everybody jumped ship. Everybody jumped ship and was hanging out by themselves, and then guess what? Effective grassroots, non-directed activism stopped Obama, and everybody got back on board. Some people swam away, some people drowned, some people, some businesses went out of business because everybody jumped ship. You can't stay in business if people don't buy from your store. Some people sunk, drowned without, wanting to. Some of us were able to weather through. And what happens now is every time a little boat comes up, a little raft, and shouts at us, give us your rights, a bunch of people jump off the boat into the water and go, I'm drowning. And then we drag them back in the boat and go, oh, are you okay? And they've become accustomed to jumping in the water every time we get attacked and going, oh, we're drowning. Oh, it's the end. Oh, it's the end of the Roman Empire. Oh, our Second Amendment is being lost. It's a civil war. And then everybody who's new goes, oh, my goodness. People who are valid and on our side fell off the boat. Let's bring them in. Oh, let's dry them off. Oh, let me hear your war stories. How many times have you fallen off the boat? Oh, my, so many times. They don't realize some crew of the boat's been sitting here driving the boat the whole time, that the boat has a crew, right? The boat is, and they don't think about that. They think about the yahoos that are jumping off and jumping back on. I call them the exploiters. So I don't know if this analogy worked this time, but there's people that every single time we get attacked, make money, sell T-shirts, get a bunch of things, and the nonprofits have to okay with that because that's how they make their thing. I mean, they're not doing bad things, but I'm saying there's other things we could be doing.
Yeah.
We don't just have to be.
So I want to butt in here real quick. What I really liked about that is quality over quantity, right? Quality over quantity. So I remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, there was this huge riff. It was Phoenix Arms, Phoenix Ammo, and there was Rob Pincus, right? Well, Phoenix had this position where if you're a Biden supporter, there's a little questionnaire on their website. They're not going to ship you ammo. They're going to cancel your order. You're done. And, at first I was kind of upset with that, but then I listened to the interview and I understood from a business standpoint, it's not good business. You're cutting out half your market, but he's standing principally and he's putting his money where his mouth is. And he says, I want a quality advocate, not quantity. And the reason I say that is, all these new gun owners are great. I love new gun owners, right? They help with everything. But I also need these gun owners to stand shoulder to shoulder with me to when this bad bill comes through, that they're going to call their elected officials, even if we don't see eye to eye politically, right? So I need them to make those hard calls, to make those emails that are going to help support my 2A rights as well as theirs. And so that's what I really liked about its quality. And that kind of changed my perspective. Well, I'm not going to buy ammunition from Phoenix because I shouldn't have to check a box on who I voted for to spend my money. So that's my position with him. But I like the way that he was principled about it. And I think it does make a lot of sense. We do need more, quality over quantity.
And so to that, partially what you two of you have been saying is what Guns and Barbecue said is like, what happens when all of the current and old die and you haven't brought in new? This is where mentorship comes into play. And this is where the old need to be available and willing to help with those who want to learn. There's a lot to learn when it comes to advocacy, and there's a lot to learn when it comes to activism. Just like there is an incredible amount to learn when it comes to what firearm is really the best firearm for an individual. It comes down to personal choice and how it fits for that individual.
A revolver for everyone.
Oh, bless your heart, sweetie. I love you so much, but so sweet summer child.
I'm just kidding.
I know you are, thankfully. But it goes with that. It's like, how do we address this? Well, you address this by being available for anybody who asks questions. Individuals, you never know who you interact with at any given point when you're wearing a Pro 2A t-shirt that isn't in your face or something. Like some of the subtle ones, like the Pew Pew shirts from Colleen Noir, were also, and things like that. I also had one that said women's liberation, and it was very plain, simple type, plain and simple type, but it had I think my husband said it was a Beretta, and it shot through and it shattered the symbol of a female on that. And this was just for for women's liberation from what we had before. I would wear that shirt in Seattle out to dinner, and the comments that I would get were extremely interesting, and same with the responses. Those from the marginalized communities were very for the shirt. Those who I could peg as being a supporter of any of the gun control bills, that I could identify them from 50 feet away, found that shirt repulsive. But it opened up conversations. And then there was another one with girls with guns. They had a very simple, very elegant shirt that was very classic, not too over the top and like massively all graphic all over the shirt, but it was very clean line on that. Also opened up conversations. How people have those conversations when they see your T-shirt or they see something like that. And I don't mean the Gadsden flag. I don't mean there's a shirt
Well,
that
no,
Tim.
that's changed now. I mean, I follow on Instagram. I do a thing on Sundays to try to share
Mhm.
the people I follow on Instagram. But there are, I mean, I can
There's some
think of 6
great
or 8
shirt
girls that
companies.
I follow because they're
Mhm.
advocates, but then they, touch or are adjacent to the girl culture out there, the girl
Mhm.
gun culture, I guess. Y'all are worried about what holsters and then what instructors. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that are girl version or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't follow necessarily all of it, but I'm interested in the instructors and the industry that's developing in firearms because I've been
Mhm.
paying attention to that kind of stuff. But the idea of the shirts that are kind of sassy or cute or like whatever the feelings are of the group or of the girl or of her whatever like the season, that stuff is I think someone could, if someone's looking for something to do to add to the community, someone could do a massive research, a deep dive, the kids say, into the evolution of girls gun shirts because they started out being just the guys shirts too small for so the boots would show, and then now they're like I say, like there's whole industries, massive industry, well I say massive, but a massive number of small businesses that are supplying girls with their own gun culture merch or whatever
Yeah.
you call it, like fashion even, right?
Mhm. And there's been
With
a
the
whole
leggings, all the stretchy pants or whatever with
Oh my God,
holsters in it.
they actually have belt loops. So there's 3 that I'm aware of, and one is Valkyrie or Van Dyke Van Dyke Valkyrie. The other one is Deanie Adams, and the third one is I can't remember for Amy, and I can't remember her company
Alexa,
Dang, I
name.
feel like
Alexa,
now I need to
Yes,
add a
Alexa.
page to Minuteman.
Alexa,
I'll be
I
adding a
wanna go-
page to Minuteman for this. Yep.
Those are with the way that those shirts are and everything else are just massive. They actually have shirts that work in the sense that clothing that actually works for women, designed by women. There's another individual
Just to hide
who
the guns too. So it's like
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
got my attitude or whatever, my thing. So I'm hanging out with my girlfriends, or like you say, I'm going out to advocate, or I'm just going out on the town, and I want to be in this fashion. But yeah, then for whatever mode of carrying I'm doing.
So, and then there's a couple other ones too. So DJ, I'll have to get those company names completely for you in a little bit. This is one that is cute. I've actually seen this one, and this one is step on snake and find out. And this particular one for this version was done as very cutesy. And it's actually also done on a onesie. So can you imagine going to a baby shower and bringing in a gift for the mom and for the father, something that's cute, and that's a cute little snake. He's adorable looking on that. But that's also how you change the culture. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you gave my child something that has gun related or anything else on it. I can tell you at 3 o'clock in the morning when that child has spat up or had an explosive diaper, when it comes in, if that happens to be the clean piece of clothing that's there, they're going to put it on and that child's going to be wearing it. If that happens to be during the day and everything else and they go out, people are going to see that. Oh, where'd you get this? This was a gift. That's adorable. Oh, step on snake. How can I find it? That's what they're going to learn on this. And that's one of the ways you change culture is through simple, cute, effective,
Well, it's the way it's changed, and it is changing. That's all I like to add. Is that
yeah,
isn't new. This isn't something that should happen. This is happening. So
it
I
is.
know
We
I
are
always say
working
that
on
I
changing
caveat stuff with that. A lot of
Mhm.
the stuff that's out there is focused on what we should, and people aren't paying attention to what we have already. So we're talking
Mhm.
about existing stuff right now.
Yeah,
I
so
need
this
to end it 'cause I don't want to make this too long because otherwise we've got a lot of good stuff in here. So I'm going to
Mhm.
throw one last question so I don't throw everybody out. We'll do one last question and give everybody a chance to say it or answer it how they want. And then we'll give everybody a chance to plug whatever they might have to plug out there. And thanks everybody who's showing up live. Feel free to answer this one yourself. It's pretty much the question I asked earlier and then said I'd ask it, and then I never did. So I'm just going to rephrase it and ask it again, throw it up here, and then highlight it. Paraphrasing what I put up there before. Is there a path to renormalize basic firearms awareness and education in the schools in 2022?
Yes.
Yes.
School districts.
Open-ended.
School districts. Get involved with the school districts. Get involved with the school. Even if you do not have a child, and you rent or own property, even if you rent, you pay property taxes via your rental payment to your landlord through that part of it. Get involved with the school district. That is going to be the smallest political issue or thing where you can be in there. Know what they're teaching the kids in the schools. Are they teaching the kids how to read, how to write, how to understand? Are they teaching the children how to read cursive and script so that they can actually read the Constitution for themselves? But that's one of the ways. Get involved with the school districts. Get involved, and if it's a private school, get involved with the private schools. Bring this up. You want to bring inclusive, safety, anti-bullying education to prevent suicide and aggressive action to the schools. How do you do that? Firearm safety education. Programs such as Derek's, programs such as Walk the Talk America. How do you do this? Children need to know that there are ways and programs that are out there that can help them learn how to deal with the stress.
Are you saying kids need to know, like kids can request it or demand it, or are you saying like
no?
The parents have to be involved. Okay. Older kids from the age of 13 before they graduated from high school. Once you're in high school, you have a little bit more ability to push for programs through school programs and things like that. School clubs, all of that stuff. Yes, you can push that. High school students have a little bit more leeway, especially in your junior and senior year. But anything younger than a sophomore in high school, all the way through kindergarten, that is the parents. That is the legal guardians. Get involved with the kids. Get involved with the schools. Get involved with what's being taught. And by getting involved in the school districts, that is how you can get actual safety training, anti-bullying, suicide prevention, anti-aggressive programs brought in to prevent school shootings, to prevent suicide, to prevent abusive behavior. That's my thought.
Right on. How about DJ? Then I'll let Derek answer that one last.
Yes, I think by increasing community participation. I think that civic organizations, and since we're going to pass to Derek next, maybe he could talk about work with the Kiwanis Club. I think that organizations like the Optimist Club already involved in education. Other organizations, the Lions, I mean, pretty much any social organization, community organization, trying to do what they can for their individual districts. It's a great way also to muster the forces of those parents, collectivize them, and present through another organization that has some recognition, not just the independent individual voices, but those made collective, I think would be a great way to increase the normalization and the return to firearm safety in our schools.
So I'm up. So I think it's very doable. So, back in 2019, I actually wrote a Senate bill we got a public hearing that year. And so would have authorized our program for all first graders in the state of Oregon. And so we're talking Hawaii, Missouri, Nebraska. We're trying to help get it started there, but we can do it from a legislative standpoint as well. And that's the one thing that I would encourage for our advocates and our activists here. If you're an expert in something, write a bill, write a piece of legislation that's meaningful, that can help us, because it will put them on the defensive. It'll make them spend the money, and it'll highlight the holes in their game. And that's what we did. When I wrote Senate Bill 801, we got a public hearing. Once we have everybody's under oath, we're in front of the education committee, and we were able to pick apart the other side under oath and totally make them look foolish. And that was, I mean, we didn't get through to the next hurdle, but we learned a lot from the process. We also got everything on video and we exposed them. And so now when I go back, now I'm going to try again this year. Is I already know where they're going to go with the argument. They're going to talk about some failed Rutgers study from 2017, and I'm already going to have all the information that's going to tell me that, and so I'm already going to know where they're going to be. So I'm going to go a different direction and hopefully make something happen. But that's what I try to like impress upon all of us as advocates is, we can do our part by putting pen to paper and making something simple and concise. We could disband, gun-free zones in our states, if we do it properly. We can. There's little victories that we can do that are going to add up to a big, huge victory at the end of the day if we could just start somewhere.
Don't discount your voice, even though within Washington we had a major setback with the assault weapons, with the magazine capacity ban, but we gained valuable information in that process, and also in the way of how to mobilize firearm and owners across the state. We had technically 1 out of 500 Washington residents respond to the magazine capacity bill confirmed against the bill. And that type of data is critical in fighting lies. There's other ways of dealing with it where you have individuals who do massive research, and we were able to counter lies by the state legislatures during the committee hearing and address it, because there's individuals, as an example for this, what Derek was talking about and being able to address stuff, the Washington Civil Rights Association, which is a program put on by Dan Mitchell, who owns Sporting Systems, who is anybody in Washington and Northern Oregon is aware of this man. He's done amazing work in defense of the Second Amendment rights here in Washington. And so he has this set up. We have a Discord channel that is set up so that people can learn about the bills that are coming up, how to be an advocate. And these are individuals from across the political spectrum here in Washington. So during the hearing, people are watching what's going on. There also happen to be, because of they're at work or school or something like that, they're able to have Discord up. Which is also, again, and this is so parents are aware, Discord is primarily set up for gaming, for computer games, so that people can communicate outside of the game chat programs within, like, say, League of Legends and things like that. Some of the fighting games, GTA, Grand Theft Auto, and things like that. This is a way of setting up raids. This is a way of setting up chats. You can actually send photos, video, everything. So if your 13-year-old wants to be on this, parental controls, make sure about that. So sorry for the tangent on that, but we have individuals who are monitoring this. They could see what was going on at the same time that we were, of those of us who were testifying, and give us the information to counter the lies being done by Senator Marco Elias and Senator Patty Curter during the committee hearing itself. So we have individuals who are impaneled. We were able to speak against it. Do not discount your ability to help. People have the ability, if you are good at researching and finding out information, that is needed. Hands down, stuff is needed.
We had something very similar in Texas when they were doing their constitutional carry testimonials. Clover Tack had a room just like this when he was in here earlier. I'm not in here, but chatting out with chat earlier, in a StreamYard room just like this, and it was the same effect. It gave people a method, understanding and using technology to be more effective as people who were offering testimony over the 10-hour session. So I think to summarize that, learning and using technology to be a more effective advocate is something in 2022 that isn't very difficult. And if you don't want to do it yourself, then support someone who's interested, able, and on the job. So with that in mind, I was asking if they've got a Patreon over at KidSafe. So Derek is joining us here on the chat today, and he's the founder of KidSafe in 2016, 18? What year?
Yeah, we've been a nonprofit since 2016.
16. And
Yeah.
they've got a Patreon. If you're not familiar, Patreon is a way to subscribe to projects. There's all kinds of things, artists, writers, people on YouTube or whatever. This is an organization. If I found the right one, you've got a Patreon. So I'm going to become the second Patreon. You just click on it, and then it'll offer you different tiers. In other words, different ways that you can choose to pay. In this case, you only have one set up, I guess, one tier for $5. So for what it costs a cup of coffee, a gallon of gas ish, like $5. So I'll click on the stuff and finish. It's that simple. I mean, I could click on my PayPal or whatever, and then I subscribe, and now it'll be connected to my PayPal, and each month on the first or something, it's going to grab $5 and shove it over into their PayPal. And think about that.
Appreciate
in the world that we live in today, 100 people do that, and that's $500 a month. If 1,000 people, I should say, when 1,000 people do that, now that's $5,000 a month. How hard is it to get 1,000 people? Go check out anything on YouTube and see how many views it has. Go check out, a Substack thing and check out how long it takes to get to 1,000. It's not it's definitely a doable thing, and I'm a big fan of Patreon for now. Patreon does work to accomplish this. It allows people to invest, to be venture capitalists in things that you value. In this case, Second Amendment infrastructure. And so, yeah, I'm going to encourage people to check out the KidSafe Patreon. I'm going to encourage you to take $20 a month, go over there and drop some amount on KidSafe, drop some amount on us. We have a Patreon over there. There's a scroll at the bottom of the screen, and it thanks the Patreons that allow us to put effort into projects like this. And those 100, we're down to 145. So we can definitely use it if you've been thinking about this and haven't pulled the trigger. It's pun intended, right? Then grab $20, head over to Patreon, consider it a subscription to another thing that you would subscribe to for $20. Chop that $20 up however you'd like. $5, $2, $3, $7, however you'd like. Drop a couple on us, drop a couple on KidSafe. Find other valid stuff that you find interesting or valuable. You're going to find people out there that create, that build, and that have done some amazing stuff. And put that $20 into Patreon for the next 5 months. You're going to spend $100 that way, and come back after you've done that and let me know if that $100 was invested well, and if you value what you got out of that $100 and what was created. Again, if we have 1,000 people throwing $20 a month, we change the Second Amendment. Seriously, Tony Simon with $5,000 a month would be in a different position than he is right now. Anybody who we've mentioned tonight with $5,000, I don't have $5,000 a month. I haven't made $5,000 a month since I worked at AOL. Like, I have no idea what that's like. So in 2022, we have the ability to fund all the projects that are already being done. So I'm here to encourage you to value your voice and be a participant. Just like we kind of wrapped up here, being part of the game as a constituent, as a citizen, as a voter, and as a person who writes bills and offers them to the system that represents us. You can do all that, or you can support the people that are already doing it. And it's not that difficult to throw $2, $5, $10 at people. It's basically a cup of coffee. Some people buy us a BLT. Some people buy us some chocolate chip pancakes. I've recently added the chocolate level for people that want to jump up there and say like happy birthday or something at us, and help make up for the people that probably have to jump off for money reasons. I can't imagine a bunch of people that have supported me for a while said, you know what, I don't think he's doing what I like, and I don't like the 2A. More than likely, if somebody had to cut off $2 a month to our projects, it's because they're going through some time. So I don't have any hard will. I mean, people have given us the ability to do what we do. But yeah, throw some scratch over into the industry, not the industry. The industry has a lot of money. But throw some scratch into the advocates that are out there that have a Patreon, and let me know what you think. And I'll quit the sales pitch here. But I don't think it's a sales pitch. I'm hoping that
it's not a sales pitch.
Motivation to invest in our future.
It's not a sales pitch. And Derek and G-Webs, have you also considered Subscribe Star? Because
Yeah, I have the Subscribe Star also. Problem is nobody used Subscribe Star. A bunch of people say, "Oh, I don't like Patreon. Use Subscribe Star," and then they
I
don't
use
subscribe to
Subscribe Star. So I will find you on Subscribe
Okay.
Star. So post
I
a
used to have
Subscribe
one,
Star.
and then that person left.
Okay, find and this is the thing too, Derek. Get
check
on
that out.
Subscribe Star also. It
There
is
are
an
some other
issue.
ones. There's some interesting ones, and of
Ultron
course,
is
with 87,000 new IRS agents, it's going to be fun going forward.
Yes.
So that's why ideally I like to use one, not because I'd like. I mean, I'm all about exploring the options available to us in 2022 on the internet, but realistically, the people that need to get to that could accomplish this, I could list. We all know them. We've all met them. They're all going to be at GRPC or at SHOT Show or both, right? We know who they are, and those people with $1,000 people supporting them would be done. So, as much as I like the idea of broadening our basket so that we have more than one basket to put eggs in, what we really need is Midway to stop doing what they do, and Brownells to stop doing what they do, and instead to do what they could do, not what they should do or have to, but what they could do, and that's provide the equivalent of a Patreon for Second Amendment, and not for the people that make money off of every time they're stressed in this situation, but the people that are solving that, and the people that are going to create such a larger industry than they can even imagine, that they'll just be harvesting money in the future. But it isn't by entertaining or shock and amazement or laughing at stuff or causing rifts is what we got now. And that's what those two industry leaders support. And I'm just ranting some 2.5 hours into this, but we need a Patreon for Second Amendment. So what I'm trying to do is
there is a Patreon for the Second Amendment, and that's Ultron. He's actually come out openly in Ultron. Ultron, Ultreon, I believe.
Well,
so
I've seen Ultron, and I'm open to the idea, but it hasn't created.
It's new, and where Patreon had its issues and everything else when it was new, the CEO has actually come out openly and said he is pro 2A. And
That's cool, but he's probably also pro a bunch of other stuff, and then that isn't the same as Midway and Brownells funding the necessary elements that keep our industry alive. So I'm all about free speech. We've got a couple of platforms that are like, we're free speech and guns too. Awesome, really cool. Like some of us really enjoy that. The rest of us need funding so that we can finish this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that part and that aspect of it, you are correct on it, and it is something that needs to be clear. And it does need to be something very specific.
And that could that's something that really for capitalism, they should just do it because there's money to be made there. And right now, a bunch of people are making it because we're deciding, should we use Patreon? Should we use Subscribe Star? Should we use one of the others? Like you're saying, Ultron?
Mm-hmm. So those are the three that I'm aware of. Yeah, those are the three that I'm aware of, and where Subscribe Star isn't as bad as Patreon, because Patreon has kicked off 2A, and they have kicked off.
No, they haven't, though. I'll stop that one right there. The people that they've stopped off are those people that jump off the boat that I was talking about earlier. The people that use weird marketing things 10 times over, do kinds of stuff that's skeptical on whether or not it's giveaways or things like that.
Where it's,
when people don't read the rules, they get kicked off, and then they can't get back on because they never read the rules. Instead of saying, hey, everybody, here's a lesson, let's move on, they go, they're against us. Follow me over here. That happens over and over and over.
Yeah, there's one in particular that we know, and we can discuss that at another time. But the issue is that Patreon has kicked other individuals off for free speech issues. So that is an issue.
I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm just saying
they aren't perfect.
Patreon and 2A. We can fund 2A.
Yes,
and I'm glad that we got another entity over there with KidSafe, but I'm not saying it's our. Patreon is a nice, what they call handhold while we're climbing. But it's a handhold. Like I say, we need a rest. We need a shelf or something where we can put up one of them cool tents that they live on when they're hanging out on the cliff, and that would be the industry providing that. It doesn't have to be Brownells. I don't want to shame Brownells just because they don't.
Brownells
does a lot. Gunbroker, who created their own infrastructure online, who's changed literally the game. Somebody like that, or Guns USA, Armsless, one of those could come in. They know the tech and they know the humans involved. Like they literally know most of us. So yeah, we've got plenty of potential out here. They just need to know that they need to do it.
The one issue, and this is coming from somebody who does work in tech, is going to be the processors. There's only 3. And until something is set up on that, and that is, in order to set something up on the processing, it's extremely difficult because you're dealing with federal finance laws. The only one that I know for that's actually going head to head up against PayPal, up against some of the stuff like that is Dan Bongino's group. And I think it's, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but he is going up against PayPal when it comes to being pro free speech, pro 2A. And he is very clear about that. And he is working with Rumble and Locals company to be able to go head to head against the technology. So they are having that established. Is it something new? Yes, but this is something they have the funds. I'm seeing more gun content on Rumble. I'm seeing more people being able to use things like that on there. So it is a significant issue to be aware of.
Thank you.
And so yeah, it's a, and so G-Webs, you may have seen people drop off of Patreon when that one group was kicked off, because that has had repercussions across the board on some stuff. So
well, I've seen plenty of them come and go. There's a lot of there's a whole lot to get into when you get into the people that currently use the systems. But one of the big issues is the people that currently use the systems are useless. They're pointless. They haven't done anything. If they would have accomplished anything, they had the resources to have done so years ago, literally. When the antis, the people who are against us, were on their knees and had failed and there was nothing else to be done, they walked away. They didn't take the lead and do anything. And that's the same human beings that exist today. So those are the people that are using the platforms. You know who doesn't use the platforms? Derek. He's got 2 Patreons. What's going to happen when Derek is at the $15,000 a month level and deciding if he wants to use Patreon or not? Because the people who've invested in what he does have gotten a return on their investment, right? So the people that use it now are trying to fund big screen TVs, filling houses with Jell-O, bullshit, like having 6 people that they pay to do stuff that they don't need to. I know for a fact a few of them have lazy cousins that they're paying the bills for. And the ways that they're using the systems that exist now are to do all this waste. And the Second Amendment advocates that are out there aren't trying to fund their lifestyles. They're just trying to accomplish their goals. So that's why I rally against the concept that the people who have the examples and the things out there now, if you know advocate groups or like people that are doing stuff from outside of guns or something, or even in guns that I'm not aware of, fine. I'm mostly talking about the people that entertain and the people that use the platforms to pay for the Jell-O and the 50 BMGs that they break and that kind of crap. Like the frivolous stuff that makes gun owners look petty and look like all we care about is our toys and that we don't have much interest in other than making noise and being loud and bothering the neighbors. So those people who desperately run through online platforms like Kleenex because they don't play well with others and they need to be funded at extreme levels are apples and oranges with the Second Amendment advocates that could use literally $5,000 worth of funding to the people that we talked about today would change the level of the playing field. Everything we talk about today is because the antis, everything that we're talking about in the news cycles of this year have been because the antis know that they're losing and this is the last time they can use any of these things from their playbook. They're never going to be able to use an assault weapons ban again. They're never going to be able to use red flag laws again. They're never going to be able to marginalize young people again. They know that they can only do this because our mechanism is to run around and not be effective. As soon as we're effective, everything literally goes away. And now we lead the way for other groups who have been ineffective as well. I mean, going off in multiple directions here.
That's
too,
okay.
really, but
No, yeah, you're right. $5,000 is a small amount of money when you think about it, but for an individual, it's a lot. I know personally 5,000 would have allowed me to have the Seattle Tacoma Pink Pistols be at more
if
venues.
anything, it would allow us all to hire an employee, and that would allow us each to do our thing with our employee doing the stuff, right? We only have, every single thing that we've accomplished is with an activist who's part-time, an activist who's doing it in their garage on their spare time with their own money, on their own vacations from work, and sacrificing their lives and time with their families. Imagine if our Second Amendment advocates were as well off as our entertainers. And I'm not talking about movie entertainers. I'm talking about the people in my realm who have gone from nothing to millionaires based off of shooting Jello pools or whatever, making gun owners seem like yahoos. So,
I can tell you that as
all we have to do is change a dial, and then only a few $1,000s need to trickle off in a pie that's huge. I'm not even saying take away somebody's slice of pie. I'm just saying let's build some cake or bake some cake over here. Let them eat their pie. We got 300 and something thousand people in the country. What we're talking about is doable. But again,
it is very doable, and I can tell you as somebody who did it for 10 years and who did it on very little donations, and just with time. Yes, people don't realize how powerful it is. And my side was on the political side primarily, and also with the advocacy on it. And yeah, it would have been a massive help. Massive help. I mean, there is a reason why your program is one of the few that I come on anymore, and Derek's is one of the ones that I still participate with. I physically cannot do anything anymore on it because of this. And so, yeah, a lot of people don't realize. I've seen, and I've already had people reaching out to me already that with everything coming on, that, oh, I can't do this, or we're going to need you in January. And I'm like, I was very clear. Come November, I'm done. And seeing who has stepped up to fill what I'm having to step back. And this is for those who are in Washington State. I'm very serious. Derek's program will be the only one I will be participating after November. I will not be able to do what I've done for 10 years prior. I physically cannot. I have to keep my blood pressure down. And so it's one of those situations where a lot do not realize what it takes to be an advocate, what it takes to do some of this. It is a lot it takes a lot of time, and time is the most valuable resource. Money, having the money and the ability to do that, to be able to buy programs, to be able to provide printed materials. I'm grateful for the fact that Derek has been able to give me flyers and everything that I hand out at Halloween to every single child who comes to my home. They get the large flyer that says Kids Safe Foundation. This is how you protect a child. I had over 120 children at my house on Halloween last year, and I have a feeling I'm going to have even more. And I'm giving out full-size candy bars this year. So that's another thing. And that's another thing. It's like, what little things can you do that somebody can do if they want to be able to change the culture and change the message? I'm sure Derek might have some of the stuff where you can print it out and he's not sending it to you. But if you wanted to go to Kinko's or something like that to print out the resources that he has of like, this is how you protect a child. This is how you get the information out there. And there's also from Walk the Talk America, you can download their program. And they have a card that you can download that can be handed out. Download those out come Halloween, which is going to be in less than 63 days. Realize that every single child, as you give them a piece of candy, give them a flyer for Kids Safe Foundation.
Well, you could, one, because it's, who wants to flyer on Halloween, right? But you could take something and chop it up so that it's a little square folded, right? I'm thinking of, I don't know if anybody knows about this. Maybe DJ's got a picture or somebody. I'm sure I got a picture somewhere. But anyway, Cheryl Todd at her store, AZ Firearms, when it was open, they'd have this little basket by the door, and it was full of squirt guns that had AZ Firearms on them. And they were a little squirt gun, and it had a little thing tied to it that had the 4 rules of firearm safety. And it was just a little card, and I think it might even had some branding on it. And anyway, so that was about this, a little bit bigger than a silver dollar, right? Just a little piece of card folded. So yeah, you print something out that you can cut up into a little card and give them the 4 safety rules with something. And I'll bet you it could be clever and come up with some sort of a way to make it into a puzzle or something, so that they may even want to keep it for more than a second, or think about it for more than just, however long it takes them to look at a piece of paper. But no, I think that's a great idea. Now I'm going to also just capitalize on that and say, or add to that, I like to scold the national level organizations that repeatedly do the same thing year after year. It'd be easy to come up with something to offer for Thanksgiving, or for Halloween, right? Come on. We got little trinkets and stuff. We got wristbands. Walk Talk America's got wristbands.
Yeah, I give out wristbands.
Or something for kids that they'd like, or I don't know, maybe some kids probably do like wristbands if they're sized appropriately. But then I don't know, is that a choking hazard? But I don't know. There's got to be something interesting that could come up. Again, looking for an opportunity to be creative, participate, and bring your skill set to the board. Make something interesting for people to give away at Halloween that has a message that normalizes guns.
And it's normalizing the message and the communication. I can tell that I only saw one of the flyers folded up out of over the 100 that I handed out, and everyone else. And I've talked to people in the neighborhood afterwards, and like, "Oh, you were the house that gave that. That was such a good idea." And Derek has some very basic safety information on the back of the flyer, and it's maybe
it's 3.5 by 11.
Yeah, so it's not a big flyer. It's something that's easy just to slide in to the pillowcase or the big candy gathering unit that the kids have. So I would just put it in there and put it in there with it. And they're like, "Oh, what's this? This is something for your parents to read later when you get home." And to the teenagers, it's like, "Yeah, this is something you might be interested, just for some other information." So that's one of the great ways of changing culture, giving information out, and making it common for people to see that information, even if it's just Halloween. So this will be the 3rd year in a row that I will be giving out information on Walk the Talk America, Kids Safe Foundation, and suicide prevention. Because Washington State has its own program through Forefront Suicide Prevention. I will have all through Safer Homes, and I have all of that in there. I don't give it to the very, very young kids. I will hand it to the parents for the Kids Safe Foundation. But for anybody who is 7 years old or older, they get it into their bag. And, "Oh, what is this? Oh, this is just something for later." So we get very decorated for Halloween. All the kids come to the house because I decorate for Halloween, and I'm known for giving out good candy. So we have that. And last year we had the big tent because that's when we got married. And so the whole thing is that this is how you approach it. So if you were listening to this program at this late hour and everything else, and you're thinking, "What can I do as an individual? What do I like to do outside of firearms that's interesting to me that I can bring a message of safety?" Oh, like whether it's sports or anything else, just wearing a t-shirt, wearing a baseball hat, something that brings the message that is normalizing firearms as being responsible and as normal, not as something that is, as Hollywood puts it, a tool that is misused for hurting other individuals, or as the news. And I think that pretty much summarizes, or I will talk for hours.
Yeah, that's the thing is, my problem is too that I'm accustomed to being up at this hour, so sometimes I fall asleep. I don't know how to stay awake, but when I'm not falling asleep, then I end up turning these into marathons. So I tried to go for 90 minutes. We obviously failed at that. instead of going to keep going, because I think we could, let's remind everyone, my goal is to continue having interviews each Monday with people in the Second Amendment community. And just to clarify for people, obviously at this point, you probably already know, I don't intermix 2A and gun community. I'll say gun community when I mean it, because I talk about that all the time. I love it, all of it. But 2A community is a subset of it, and that's what I like to focus on specifically. One, so that people can see that every single Second Amendment advocate that we've got today, the authors, the researchers, the radio people, literally everybody that's in activism or awareness is just a regular person, like I say, doing it on the side. There's only a couple of people that are running organizations that are getting paid to just do it full time, very few. But so I like to highlight the fact that we are and why and how you're doing it, right? So that it inspires others to get on board. You don't have to be this tall to get on board, or you have to be this old to get on board, or have money, this much money, or this much awareness. Literally, everything is of value. And when you bring it to the community, then you find out what you have to offer and what others might get from you. So I'm trying to offer that with these interviews each Monday, and then on the third or fourth Monday, however the month works, we'll bring Sharon on. We'll have I'm going to have Sharon and Clover have the open invite. Maybe Tony. I don't want to fill the room too much because then we can't have anybody else in here. But I bring Tony and Clover on every Saturday anyway. I don't know if Tony's awake at midnight on a Monday like this, but he's welcome. Same with Clover. He obviously didn't show up. It's too late for him. Those of us on the West Coast, it's no big deal. It's 9 o'clock. Now it's 11 or something. So it's 11:30 at this point. But still, it's not super late. The show barely started at midnight on the East Coast. Anyhow, I'll try to bring a group on every third or the last weekend or the last Monday of the month. So we'll have more of these in the future. So this won't be the last one. It will be a little bit different. I'll keep inviting everybody, but I'm assuming not everyone will have the ability to show up. So it'll be sort of a mixed round table, I guess we'll call it.
So Derek,
Okay,
before we close up, Derek, when is your next program that people can find out for how their children can go through your program? I know you do stuff at Cabela's and at Bass Pro, but you also do it over at Albany, Oregon Police Department, and then up here in Centralia, Washington. I think the next one is in November. But where's the next one in Oregon? And I think it's close enough to where some people from Washington State can get over there too, if need be.
So I'll be back in Tualatin next month. So I got a couple classes up there. We're partnering with PDs up there. So we have the Sherwood Police Department. We'll be at the Tualatin Cabela's. So that's easy for people to come from Washington into Oregon. I'll be back at Cabela's this Thursday night. And, our first teen class, our teen rifle class is going to be on 9/10. And so we got the rifle set up. And what I'm working on right now is I'm working with the Oregon State Police is because I want to buy these kids their first gun. And what I mean by that is the Kids Safe Foundation, I'm trying to set it up, is going to pay for their first background check when it comes to when they go buy their first rifle. That's this teen project is supposed to be about. It's about teaching about civics, responsibility, and also how best to protect our 2A rights. And that's by going out and buying their first rifle when they're 18.
Mm-hmm. That's a great thing on that. And so unfortunately in Washington, you have to be 21 to be able to buy a rifle at this point.
Even a bolt action?
I don't recall. I believe it's all semi-auto, and that includes the Ruger 1022 and the Marlin 60.
So much safer.
Yeah.
Dan would be able to give you the clarification on that. My understanding is that it's all it's all rifles on that with how they did it, especially the semi-automatics.
I'm kind of soured on Ruger now and Daniel Defense, so I'll suggest CZs.
Hey, I'm a CZ girl, and so is Tony Simon. Tony and I are both huge CZ proponents on everything on that. I love my CZs and everything else. So, but again, G-Webs, thank you for having this. It's been a wonderful time as always, and I will see you in about a month or so, depending on the schedule.
Nobody jump out when I end this. I'll play some music, like everybody stick around. But
Okay.
Derek, if you want, just also give us where to contact KidSafe, the official elevator speech, if you would.
Okay, the elevator speech. So, my name is Derek, president of the Kids Safe Foundation. We've been a nonprofit since 2016, and we've gone over 26,000 kids reached now in 5 states. And so, I want to reach 10 million. And so, your help with Patreon is going to make that possible. So, I appreciate everything. Zero firearm acts is the only acceptable goal, and that's our mantra. And you can find us on our website, kidsafefoundation.org, also Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And I'm going to be a little bit more active on Patreon. So, thank you.
Right on. And then DJ, the Road 2A roadie, want to plug anything on the way out?
I do indeed. The Guns and Barbecue channel has a program later on today because we're passing into the tomorrow of Tuesday, a 2A Tuesday. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, come check him out. Wednesday afternoons, same kind of program. The Ripoff, the Almost Nightly Firearms Expo. On Saturdays, I also encourage people to check out the A Great Start Shooting Schools discussion about suicide. And I'll post a link to that channel in the description. G, thanks for the invitation. Had a great time.
Good job.
Right on. Thanks again, everybody. Like I say, I'll play this outro, and then we can chat off air. If I can find it, I probably should have it queued up. Here's Bob, the guy that started the show with me. GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. So let us know what you think. We'll be watching the comments wherever you find the video, over on gunstreamer.com or on guntube.org. Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals of gunwebsites.com encourages you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com.